Good morning. Well, for some, for others, it's not probably morning, depending. And if Mark Reid actually checks in on this one, he's from Australia. So if that happens, I don't know what it is in Australia, like relative to my time. I think it's like next week or something like that. He lives in the land of the future. Anyway, so video that I'm going to be doing today is going to be a little bit different. But before I preface that, let's say hello to the few people that showed up at this weird hour. Along with me, Michael Deaton, Wraith Knight. Let's see, Michael Deaton, Wraith Knight, Alex Baptista, Josephus Privero, JC Knott, Scuba Diver. Hello, hello. God equals the square root of -1. Hello. Russ Wren. Hey, Jeff. Hey, Russ. And David's Soul to Sleep. Good to see all of you. And Tyler West. Good to see you as well. Hello to all of you watching live, and hello to whoever watches this afterward. Let me preface this, get into this as soon as I'm still trying to shake off the, I'm recovering from, of all things, a flu shot. Kind of kicked my ass. Normally flu vaccines don't have an effect on me. This one did. It must have had like, extra trackers in it, from the Bilderbergs or something. Whatever the conspiracy theorists think poisoned you. But all right, I'm going to play this and then I'll continue ranting about unfounded conspiracies. All right, so the intro's out of the way, and we're moving right along. The video that I'm going to be reviewing right now, I have not watched this, so I'm going into this one be fresh. My brother recommended this to me. I have heard of Mark Reid. I don't know that I've ever talked to him. He's a YouTuber. Like I said, he's from Australia. And he frequents, if you go to his YouTube channel, he's got a couple playlists, and one of them are these Royal Rumble rooms where he's had, conversations with guys like John Maddox and a few of these other people. And this video is his kind of first encounter with Darth Dawkins. And so he was hanging out over at Praise I Am's channel, one of Praise I Am's live streams, which can go on for hours and hours and hours. And fans of the show know that Praise I Am had a falling out with Darth Dawkins, has since reconciled. And so Darth Dawkins is welcome back on the show, presumably without mods, though. So Praise doesn't get, doesn't get loyal followers blocked like he did last time he gave Darth controls. So with that being said, my brother first pointed this out. I think he found out about it because he kind of checked in on Praise I Am, and we'd both heard of Mark Reid through guys like, I think, Math Pig and a few others. So I was aware of the name. His name had been mentioned to me. I don't know that I've ever talked to him. And if Mark watches this, if I have spoken with you, I do apologize. I don't remember if we ever incidentally met at some point. But after my brother pointed it out, I was like, yep, I'll look into it. I'll give it a watch. And then someone who follows me on Twitter sent me the link from Mark Reid's channel where he'd put this on. So that's what I'm saving here. So the link to this particular video, this is from Mark's take on it, and I've mentioned him in it. So, if you want to watch the whole thing in its entirety, go ahead. I've skipped ahead about 7 minutes into this. So the conversation that he's having, he is in a room with Praise and Olive and Sparrow. Olive and Sparrow, both theists as well. Kevin's biblical discussions is in there, and he's kind of a hardhead. I've watched him have conversations with, most recently with Skylar Fiction. And Erica Hubner is in there as well. Erica seems, for the most part, Sparrow, Olive, and Erica, I think are pretty nice. They're fairly easygoing, but they're almost too easygoing in some cases because sometimes they kind of contradict things that they say. But it's all of them kind of like talking at Mark Reid about belief and kind of basic kind of Christian theological stuff. And Mark is just sort of presenting himself as he's skeptical and he doesn't believe these claims. So where I'm at, I think we're only a few minutes out. He has a brief exchange in this with Kevin, and then Darth shows up within like a minute of this. And there's a little bit more back and forth. At some point in this goes on for a long time. I don't know how much of this I'm going to be able to get through. But at some point, I've kind of scrubbed through to see how this thing, see how long Darth or Mark are in here together. And at some point, Praise just sort of dumps everybody, including himself, and just makes the room about the two of them. So the two of them kind of are talking for, I think, the bulk of this thing. Well, the second half of the thing. That's about 40 minutes in. And, you know, given the way I talk, I could probably do like 6 videos about this thing. But that's an indictment of, you know, my own loquaciousness. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to start it here. The conversation is relatively okay. I think Kevin starts to try to make it a little bit more confrontational. It's not hostile, but he tries to make it a little bit more confrontational. I believe he comes in and accuses Mark of being proud or not being humble. He lacks humility. And then Darth shows up. And like I said, I don't know exactly when Darth starts piping up into this, but clearly it doesn't take, you know, I think he probably tries to control the whole thing within a matter of minutes. Mark is on Brainbuck's channel now, of course. Damn it. Let me take a look and see. Let's see. Hide science. I think that's. Why didn't I get that? I didn't get a notification for that. And I'm subscribed to Bree. Yep. Oh, yes. Yep, he's actually in the live chat. How long has Bree been on? 24 watching. I don't know when she started this. Well, about almost 40 minutes ago. Okay, Bree's probably almost done. I think her channel. I think she usually only broadcasts for about an hour and a half, so I don't feel like I'm interrupting too much on that. So, well, that's cool. Okay, so Mark is around. Like I said, I don't know what his time frame. I'm hoping he gets the notification because I did mention him in this. All right. So, welcome to anybody else that's stopped in. I've missed you. Lori Hayes is here. Let's see. JL Warren, greetings. Hope your road trip's going good. I heard you were in Kentucky, so thanks for making time to watch this this crazy mess of a show while you're traveling. And by the way, if you can, I don't think he knows who I am. I've subscribed to his channel, but could you say hi to Irish Demon for me and let him know I'm a fan? I'm sure he doesn't know me from Adam, but I do like his stuff. Okay. I sent Mark Reid an email. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'll have to say, because I don't think I'm connected with him on Clubhouse or Discord, but if he wants to come in and kind of comment on this, I'll definitely let him come in. Always for your channel, amigo. Thank you, JL. Always appreciate that. And Maya's here. Good morning, Maya. Good to see you again. I know you were over in the live chat over on Carlton's video, which, by the way, I did not tweet out support for Carlton's newest video. He did a video, or he might still be covering it too. He's been covering some D-Roy shenanigans on his. He usually goes. Actually, there's been a couple weekends where he hasn't gone live, but he was doing one today, and it was pretty good. Oh, enjoy breakfast. I hope it's filled with bacon and sausage. God, I need a lumberjack breakfast. I had a smoothie. Gotta quit eating so healthy. All right, I'm going to minimize this. We're going to get started, and I'm going to speed this up just a hair to 1.25 so that we can see if we can get through. I just slowed it down to 0.25. Brilliant. Okay, there we go. All right, here we go, folks. Mark Reid versus everybody.
And the ones on the rock are those who, when they hear the word, receive it with joy. But these have no root. They believe for a while, and in time of testing, fall away.
Yes, I suppose that's where I have the problem, because I don't believe in a devil either. I don't believe in any of that. So,
God gives grace to the humble. That's the problem.
I'm sorry.
God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. That's your problem.
Well, I don't think I'm very proud at all. I think I'm humble.
God resists the proud. So God's all about them easy pickings. God's only interested in changing the hearts of the credulous. The incredulous, he's not going to bother with.
enough to know that I'm
Mark, you're
fallible.
quite right.
Okay, I don't know why you'd say that, but I mean, that's your opinion. You're welcome to it. That's fine. I don't think I am. I'm humble enough to know that I can be mistaken about stuff. And I guess my problem is that when you say sort of these things about the heart isn't, I mean, it's a pump for blood. It's not like, sort of, I don't see anything.
No, I'm sorry to cut you off, sir. But when we say heart,
What?
we're not talking about your organ in your chest that's beating. We're talking about your mind, your thought processes.
Okay.
Material.
Well, maybe I'm taking that a bit literally then. So
Oh, definitely. I think Mark Reid was definitely taking that literally. Mark Reid is here. Hello, Mark Reid. Damn, that guy's in for a hard time. Mark, let me know if you do want to come in, since this was your rodeo. If you want a link to join this, let me know, and I will let you in. In fact, I'll leave it up to you. Let me just post the StreamYard link in there. For anybody else, I don't want to bring anybody else in because I take too much time as it is. So if we get a lot of crosstalk or cross conversations, it's going to take a million years to cover any of this. But the link is in the chat, and I will pin it. That way it's there. And Mark, if you want, no pressure. If you want to come in, great. If you don't, also great. It's there whenever you decide you want to or don't want to, whatever. But I'll leave it pinned there for you. And just to let everybody know, that's for Mark and Mark only. Mark special. Oh, and he's here. Great. Okay. Let me see. Stream. Hello. Welcome.
Hello. Yes, I'm here. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's a bit late here, and I can't stay that long, but I thought I'd show my face and own up to my mistakes, and just wear it. But yeah.
Well, it's not often that I get like multiple. I mean, I do occasionally. The recommendations will line up, but when my brother had seen this, and I think he caught this because he follows some of Praise's shenanigans, and I think he caught it over there. And he was like, "Hey, Mark was on there for quite a while, and he kind of gets ambushed by Darth." And he's like, "You might want to check that out because I think that's the first time Mark Reid's ever." And I'd heard of your name before, and I was like, I think I'd heard of your name through like maybe Answers in Atheism. I think Speed of Sound,
right, yeah,
because he in Darth's parlance, he stalks John Maddox. So I know he's seen some of you guys. Maybe
I just drop into these really wild streams like Praises and Maddoxes and stuff, and just be annoying, basically.
Yeah. So I guess for the purposes of this, I don't want to put you out too much on the spot, but you want to give like a kind of a brief intro of what you do. I know your intro from your YouTube show, but if you want to.
Yeah, no, I really love debate. I do a lot of debate. I just have conversations with people. I'm kind of just very new to YouTube. I've only been on for probably less than a year doing it seriously, so I'm just getting started and trying to find my place in the whole scheme of things. But I do really like debate and do them a fair bit. I've debated Hovind and Sal Cordova and the usual suspects basically.
Oh, that's right. I think I saw you did debate Ken Hovind, didn't you?
Sure, twice.
Was
once
that
on the Ark and once on evolution?
Was that on? Were those on MDD, Modern Day Debate?
No, that was on SFT's channel. I don't think Ken Hovind's welcome on MDD for whatever reason. I'm not sure though. He's never over there. But.
Probably the crimes.
I doubt it. I mean,
really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so. I really don't. I think. Yeah, I'm a pure speculation. I'm not sure if he really likes the platform or what have you. I think he feels a lot safer over at SFTs for obvious reasons. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my brother did clarify. He said, Mark actually sent me the link to that. I missed that one when it happened live. Oh, okay. So yeah, he had your link as well. So, well, anyway, I got a couple of recommendations, like I said at the beginning, and I was like, well, okay, it's time to check out Mark's channel and find out what's going on. I should have done some more digging because I'm sure you've had some conversations with the Kent Hovind thing. Kent gets so much attention that I don't really pay too much attention to him, and I'm not really
That's totally fair. That is so fair. Yeah, absolutely. No, I actually agree. Yeah.
And there's so many people, like if there's me or there's like Erica Gutsick Gibbon, right?
Yeah.
Like that's me walking up to him with a pop gun, making noises in his face, and then Gutsick Gibbon just rolls over him with a tank. That's the level of difference in knowledge that the two of us have over the subject. You know, I'm not in the natural sciences, so it's like, you know, I can kind of give like, I acknowledge that evolution is a scientific theory and a confirmed fact, but after that, if they're like, oh yeah, then how does, you know, like as soon as they start doing that or start bringing up apologetic, you know, the kind of apologetic woo to like, well, doesn't this will throw a wrench into the works? Like, maybe, but that's only because I'm not a biologist or not a chemist or not a physicist or something like that. Like, I'm sure there's people better equipped and more knowledgeable that can handle these kinds of.
Oh, absolutely, and there's a ton of people that know way more than me. I'm just and Darth in this points it out. He says I've got the gift of the gab kind of thing. It's just, and no, I've actually been trained in talking to people. I used to work in on the phones for major telecommunications companies for years and years and years on end. Part of that was doing high-level complaints, dealing with difficult customers, like the worst complaints you'd ever seen. So I'm actually trained in conflict resolution and things like that, which is a weirdly transferable skill to debates. Go figure. You know,
what I think is odd, though, is that you have that skill. You're doing that in your professional life, but then you're like, part of that is like informing and maybe enriching, you know, a hobby that you've got on the side.
Well, I don't work in that area anymore. But
oh, you don't?
know,
Okay.
No, I'm in sort of networks now, sort of computer systems and networking. So like network engineering, basically. But more operational stuff. So
it's a little calmer now.
Well, I'm completing my studies for a bachelor's in that field. So
good for you.
That's what I'm doing at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And well, I guess we'll get back into this then. And thanks again for coming on. I know you don't have too long. But
my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me on and giving a shout out to my channel. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing. What is just out of curiosity? I don't want you to like reveal your location. I know you're in Australia, and I don't know how many Americans realize how big the place is. But what time is it there?
It is 11:18 p.m. So I'm 12 hours from Eastern Standard Time.
Okay, so you're in Western Australia. Okay, that's what I. Okay, yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, you guys are far enough over. So you're over on like the Perth side of things.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm always confused by some of the time zones because I used to live in Japan, so I know kind of how to do the general math. But you know, Australia kind of throws me off the further west you go. Okay.
Yeah, it's +8 hours. Eastern Standard is -4, so it's like just flip the times basically. So
right,
11:18 at night.
That's actually easier to. But you guys do have a daylight saving time that kicks in, don't you?
No.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No.
Yeah, that was another thing I wasn't saying.
That's the confusing thing. The Eastern Coast does, the Western Coast doesn't. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, props to the Western Coast for not bothering with that mess. That's crazy. All right, so a little bit of a preview here from John Rapp. He writes, Dee Dee has a question for Mark Reid. What is the prevailing provisional consensus about the nature of the independent cosmological constants? He says that's an actual question that I think is asked by Darth Dawkins during this conversation.
Prevailing provisional consensus about the nature of independent cosmological constants. I have no idea. I don't remember that question. Prevailing provisional nature of it. Is that like referring to fine tuning or something?
It sounds like it. Yeah, almost sounds. Yeah, but I guess. Well, now I'll be listening for it. He says that is a DD quote. Maybe it's not from this. Maybe it's just from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't hear it in this one, but yeah.
Where in Japan? I've spent a lot of time all over the. I studied at a place about 30 minutes north of Kyoto. I went back to do some job hunting. I'm responding to Aaron Massa, who's where in Japan. Yeah. I went back and lived with a person in southern Japan, right on the tip of Honshu, which is Shimonoseki, which is really only famous for the poisonous blowfish, and they were a pivotal part in the Mongolian invasion, the first one, I think, maybe the second. And then I spent some time in Hiroshima and Tokyo, but. Altogether, I think I've spent about a year in Japan non-consecutively, but almost all those times it was pretty tough. Japan's a challenging place to live.
It's a nice place to visit, though. I love Japan, visiting there.
Yeah, I can imagine. I remember when I went there to study, the first 2 weeks I was there, I loved it. And then by the third week, culture shock hit. And I was like, this is a better place to vacation. And then when the grind of the particular school program that I was in kicked in, it got really stressful. And then I went back again because I got a scholarship and tried doing it again. And that was also a mistake. But then as the year after I graduated, years went by, I went over there to visit friends and stuff and to find a job. So I ended up staying there for about 6 months and just sort of, it was kind of embarrassing, but I ended up couch surfing for the most part, which probably stressed some of my friends out. But yeah, I mean, at that point, it was a little bit more fun when I found kind of like a niche of people that were kind of like a group of foreigners and Japanese people that sort of like, there was this collective of people in Hiroshima that like ran coffee shops and did musicians and stuff like that. That was very cool. When I ran into that group, that was a lot of fun. So it took a while, but I kind of found an enjoyable spot of it. But yeah, if anybody has the means, definitely go there and check it out. Especially Kyoto. Kyoto is gorgeous.
My thought process.
Okay, let's get back into this. So Darth has just arrived. Evolution Faults. He's popped up on the bottom of the screen. So here we go, folks. The ambush begins.
They're fallible. I've been wrong about plenty of things before. So I don't see sort of a faith as in trust in what you think. I think I need stuff to back it up, sort of more evidence to back it up, because I've thought wrong things
God doesn't
before.
command us to just blindly believe and not bring our brains along with us. There are evidences and reasons to believe the Bible. There's fulfilled prophecies. We have ancient historical writings that validate that Christ indeed did go.
Right, but those evidence, I love it when these guys do this. Like, oh, you already know that God exists, and oh, you don't have to take it without evidence. Like, okay, but if you already know it, then all that evidence is being interpreted based on what you already presume to know. So it's not really evidence. Like you're literally, Kevin is literally justifying, the notion of confirmation bias. It sounds like.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's staggering to me that when they do this kind of stuff, it's like, okay, that kind of violates this principle of evidence, right? Like, if there's good evidence out there, and I'm skeptical, or Mark is skeptical in the situation, then the evidence should start kind of persuading the skeptical towards the other proposition. But the evidence doesn't, and then they'll kind of retreat back into this. Oh, but you already know God, and this is a problem of your spirit, and your heart is hardened, or you have arrogance, and God, like, okay, so which one is it? The evidence is great and should convince me, but God only deals with the humble.
Well, I think that there's a disconnect between what we see as evidence, which is you start in and go to where the evidence leads, and their idea is you have the presup, and then everything you see is the evidence for that presupposition. And to me, it's a completely alien way of doing things. You could do that with literally anything. I could believe in a magic unicorn, and I could look at the trees and see them, and the magic unicorn created, if that's what I believe. So, I think it's a very weird way of going about independent, verified evidence, really. But
yeah, agreed. Okay.
Go to the cross. Jesus is not just, it's a historical fact. Jesus existed, and that he was crucified, and that his disciples thought that they saw him after he was crucified.
That's interesting that he worded it that way, because it could be the case that Jesus was a real guy. I think the people that think he was a real historical character outweigh the number of mythicists that are out there. He actually was, but notice that Kevin says he did get crucified, and he had disciples that claimed to have seen him after his death. Cool, but it's not a fact that he actually rose from the dead, right? It is a fact that people claimed that he did.
The only one that said they had seen him is Paul, and he didn't really see Jesus so much as heard his voice and saw a light. There's nobody, no writing of a disciple saying, yes, we saw him, right? I'm sort of, maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah. I don't think that because obviously Paul has a direct, believed he had a direct connection with Jesus because he revealed himself on the Damascus road. But yeah, for the rest of them, and the narratives themselves are kind of unusual, right? Like the narratives get weird because they're like walking around with this guy who claims to be Jesus, and the way it comes across, it's almost like some of them aren't entirely sure that he's really the real deal. Like he's back. Jesus is back to square. Yeah, he's back to square one. Like, no, it's really me. I'm really back. And they're like, yeah, but like I think it's in Acts. Like they don't really recognize his face.
Right. He doesn't look like the Jesus they know, and they have to prove it by, you have to close your eyes and feel my body, which is what Thomas was doubting it was him, which is a very weird way to come back from the dead. It's like there's this totally new person there.
Very, very weird.
And Warren, 500 people saw the risen Jesus. No, it's claimed in Acts that 500 people saw the risen Jesus. It's written down, but we don't have the statements of these 500 witnesses. I mean, this kind of gets into like Pine Creek, Doug's, Flying Man kind of thing. I think he does a good job of at least setting up that one portion of it where he's like, okay, well, we've got a creed, we've got this written document that says 500 people saw him. Would you be willing to believe that my ancestor could fly? Well, no.
Yeah.
Right. Because in that case, everybody's like, oh yeah, well, that's just a writer saying 500 people saw it. I swear 500 people were there and they saw it. Like, we don't know the 500 people. So, yeah.
Why would someone be willing to go to their death knowing if they lied that they saw this Jesus again after he was crucified? Why would Peter be willing to be put to death?
That's an easy one.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why people, and I'm not saying they lied. They could have been mistaken. They could have been tricked. There's a lot of reasons why people say things that didn't. And don't get me wrong. I'm not a mythicist. I don't sort of say, hey, that Jesus was a myth. I just have no reason to believe that he was some sort of God.
I hear you, Mark.
But a lot of people say a lot of different stuff for a myriad of reasons. Like, it could be that they felt their movement was so important. They could have thought he was a god and not. But the problem is that the Bible,
Mark, would they be
like
willing
for
to die
instance,
for that? They claim they saw him after he was crucified.
well, whether or not somebody's willing to die for something doesn't really give us whether it's true or not. For instance, the people that did the 9/11 bombings that ran themselves into buildings, they were prepared to die for what they believed. That doesn't make what they believe true.
Was it because of the evidence, Mark? Did they did that of Islam, or is it because they wanted an afterlife sort of
I believe
pleasure, like a pleasure, like getting 70 virgins or something?
Yeah.
I think that was
sure.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it begins, folks.
A question was the thing. A question.
A question. And I just want to point out to people that we have almost hit the 11-minute mark. Darth has just piped up now, and this is going to lead to a saga that lasts until the 1 hour and 16 mark.
I'm not sure I can hold out that long, but yeah. But the thing is, somebody put in my comments, and they're absolutely right, that when Darth says this, just say no or only one question. Right? If he says, "Can I ask a question?" Sure, as long as it's only one. This will go on forever.
Yeah, no compound questions, Darth. I can't.
Right.
My feeble atheist mind can only handle simple, direct questions. And if you're going to be clear and circumspect, I don't want you piling up questions in one sentence or one statement. Don't do that. Okay, so let's see. Now, let me. So I have not watched this, but is his first question? He's going to ask you what you are.
I don't know. I think he's probably figured out I'm an atheist by now. But
okay, maybe he's going to ask why.
Remember. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like.
Do we have odds on that?
Yeah. Well, if he's been listening and he's been paying attention, maybe because my guess is the first question is if he's made the correct inference that you are a skeptic, then he'll be why are you an atheist or something to this.
Yeah.
But usually it's either to challenge what you think you believe or to directly insert in a question, insert a comment that starts to he thinks starts to cause the skeptic to doubt reality. So let's see if that's what he's doing.
Mark, you're asking for evidence to believe in God. Am I correct?
That is correct. Yes. Well.
Okay, so I was off.
I think in some ways, like I'm not asking for. I just want to clarify. I'm not asking for scientific evidence. I think that in some way, though, the methodology behind that evidence should be reliable. It has to be a way that we can demonstrate that it actually has explanatory power.
Okay. So you want the God world, in order to accept the God world, you want it to be demonstrated. Is that correct?
Well, I think I would need some sort of justification for it outside of just the mind. Yeah, I think that there's plenty of things we could envision in our mind that we don't believe because,
Okay, so you want the God world to be demonstrated to you. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I don't need it to be demonstrated. I'm doing just fine. But, I was interested in the conversation about
Mark,
atheism.
I'm asking a very non-controversial question.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't believe in the God world.
Well, in order for me to believe,
may I finish, please?
Yeah, sure.
I think you're turning a very simple question into a pretzel here.
Well, I'm just trying to clarify that.
Okay, Mark. No, my question requires no clarification.
Oh, okay.
You do not believe in the God world, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. What do you need in order to believe in the God world? Is it evidence, demonstrability? Is that it?
Yeah, I believe strong evidence, i.e. that's which rigorous, reliable evidence that have robust foundation in, repeatability and able to be demonstrated, basically, yeah.
Okay. Do you believe in the not God world, Mark?
Do I believe in the not God world? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
There's only two possible worlds. There's the God world and the not God world. Okay?
Well, ontologically, that's true.
Uh-oh. I can only imagine that this is going to cause problems. I wanted to highlight this. Peter, we have to talk about crossing streams with Aaron Ra. I'd like to watch these live, Yeah, sorry about that. I think he must be producing one of Aaron's. I never get notifications for when Aaron Ra goes live, even though I've been subscribed to him forever. I think it's one of those things I have to like.
YouTube thing, I think. But big shout out to Peter, he's great, and Jason Torn's out there as well, who's a good friend of mine. So big shout out to him as well. And May hello, big shout out to you. So many wonderful people here. Awesome.
Yeah, and I do just want to say, for anybody that's I know Warren says things that get under a lot of people's skin, but my brother is here, and I think it would probably benefit anybody reading the live chat to kind of let my brother engage in a long-term conversation with with Warren. Just let him go. I know that his comments come across as trolling, and I have my doubts as to what Warren's doing with his particular takes on theology, but. I don't think that his comments rise to the level of needing to be blocked or timed out all that much, unless he starts getting into something that's like incredibly offensive. And I'm talking like Jill territory, if he starts with election denying or, COVID fakery or any of this kind of stuff, then obviously anybody like that, yank them, and obviously the racists and the homophobes. But other than that, I think just let him be. I get why. I get the reasoning for wanting him out but he's not. I don't think he's quite as bad as Otangelo is when Otangelo starts copying and pasting his blog posts, and that annoys the hell out of me because he just blows up the live chat and fills it with litter. Okay, that being said, sorry again, Peter. And yeah, we ought to do a cross one. I'd like to meet Aaron Ra. That'd be kind of cool. I think I could learn something about the natural sciences from him.
Yeah, you and me both.
All right, here we go.
That's right. So you're going to be operating from and believing one or the other. So you don't believe in the God world. So you are operating from the not God world.
Well, it sounds like that you're trying to sort of say, am I a naturalist, basically? Is naturalism my thing?
No, I didn't ask you that question. I didn't ask you that question.
That's what it sounds
I'm asking
like.
you, do you believe that the not God world is true?
Yes, I believe that. Provisionally, I believe that.
Okay. What is the reliable, testable, demonstrable evidence for that?
That we have interacted with all kinds of minds, and those minds require a brain. Now, provisionally, I will say that if you can show me a mind without a brain, as we have experienced in the billions of brains that we've seen, or minds that we've seen, rather, I will. I will at least go to agnosticism to say I don't know, but provisionally I believe that you need a brain to have a mind.
Yeah, now you're talking about brains and minds. I'm simply asking you, what demonstrates that the not God world is true?
I just told you.
I heard you talking about brains.
Yeah.
Because someone asked for me.
Yeah, you didn't give me a clear answer here.
I think we should go to timed responses.
Maybe. I mean, I'm happy to talk.
I think Mark's all right. That's a good idea. If it kind of gets, I think Mark can handle it though. He's one of the atheists. I'm going to give him credit on that. I think he'll hang in there. But Mark, if you get like irked or something, we'll put in the time responses. But go ahead and continue.
Sure. No worries. I think
I want you to explain to me succinctly why the not God world is true.
Yeah. So every description of God, and I must admit, I probably shouldn't presume that you are a person that subscribes to this, but every description I've got is a mind without a brain, sort of all powerful, all knowing, or at least maximally so, people usually say. And to clarify, if this description of God isn't what you believe, but the description is almost always a mind without a brain. And the evidence that I have seen is overwhelming that a mind requires a brain. And then we have that through billions and billions and billions of things. Now, I'm not committing the black swan fallacy, because I'm not saying it isn't possible that there's a mind without a brain. Just I provisionally believe that's the case because of the evidence suggests a mind has to have a brain, and that's why I believe it. Now, I just want to clarify quickly. I don't claim to know it outright. I don't claim absolute knowledge of this. It is a provisional belief that I have based upon the evidence that I've seen.
So God doesn't exist because God necessarily does not exist because you have a provisional belief?
I
see it. And so Darth is automatically moving this from, like you've given your reasons for why you don't believe. Yeah. And now Darth wants to make this, he's desperate to do what he usually does. He wants to make this, well, he'll call it a genetic fallacy, right? Like, oh, okay, so you don't have reasons to think that he's real, therefore he can't actually exist, right? This seems to be like the only time Darth is capable of understanding the distinction between epistemology and ontology is when he accuses someone of thinking something's false. And therefore it doesn't exist.
A genetic fallacy, he went it's a non sequitur, but I don't understand why it's a non sequitur, because he asked for evidence of what I believe. But he's going to try and shift it into provide sort of the impossibility of God, or provide something else that could stand in for God, kind of thing. He's basically saying, "A God exists, now prove me wrong." And this is where I sort of kicked myself and went, I absolutely should have pointed out that's shifting the burden of proof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which I did. There are a few points where I kicked myself and went, damn, I wish I said that. That feeling when you walk away from a conversation and went, oh, God, I should have said this, That's what I
did. And Darth has a weird, I mean, even for me, I've been listening to him for years now. And even for me, I just kind of get like, he has such a weird approach to things. And it's kind of fractured and broken that it's hard to track what he's doing. And he employs a lot of language that I whether he is willing to acknowledge it or not, is ambiguous enough that you just kind of end up, on the wrong side of what he.
I hate to say it, but weasel words. Words are sort of conflated in their meaning between one thing and another.
Godless Girl, yep, I see you, and I see that you're in the back room. If you don't mind hanging out for just a little bit, Godless Girl, I can bring you in for a brief bit, but I kind of want to just leave it for Mark. Mark doesn't have too much time. He's in a very different time zone, and he's got a little bit of time to share with us since we're reviewing it, so I just kind of want to keep it between him and me. But if you're still going to be around, if you want to hang back there, once Mark has left us, I can bring you up for a little bit if you've got something that you want to share. So, because I know we've talked about having you on, so.
I'm so sorry, Jefferson. I got to probably go to bed by 12. I got to do some stuff tomorrow. But
that's fine. No, that's fine. It's totally up to you. Yeah, you leave whenever you're comfortable. But okay,
no problem. Thanks, man.
All right, here we go.
Didn't say necessarily. I said provisional. I mean, the two things.
Well, I'm asking. Your position is.
Well, the two things are incompatible. I mean, if I say provisionally, it's not necessarily
does not exist.
No. If I say provisionally, I'm not saying that God necessarily doesn't exist. I'm saying I believe that God doesn't exist based upon the evidence that I've seen.
Okay. Does it follow necessarily that God does not exist
because
you don't believe in him?
I just said no, but you asked me for my belief.
Okay, well then you don't have a demonstrable case that God does not exist.
No, I just given you the case.
This is always rough coming from Darth, but I'm going to let this play through because he's hitting his classics now.
No, you're not. You didn't understand the analysis. Okay.
No. I think you're looking
your position.
I think you're looking for an ontological truth here, while we're talking about.
I'm asking you to explain to me what the demonstrable, repeatable, testable evidence is that God indeed does not exist, and you are telling me God does not and cannot exist because you don't have a belief in him because he would be an unembodied mind, a non sequitur.
I know.
Right?
Yeah, right. Smuggle cannot in there. He says does not and cannot, and then smuggles it in there and moves on. It's like, no, I never said God cannot exist.
Right. It's a different claim with different, and there's a different burden on you to claim that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is interesting because, but this is part of like his kind of projection, because he's embraced a certain part of the modal ontological argument where God is either necessary or he's impossible, right? So if you disagree with Darth from the jump, then you must be arguing for the impossibility of the God that he's talking about. But he's not clear about the kind of argument that he's engaging in. So he starts off by getting upset. He starts off in a casual thing like, hey, why are you an atheist, or why are you this, and are you one of these people that looks for evidence, or these kinds of things to kind of suss it out. So he starts talking about your belief stance, right? Which he does this all the time with people. They're like, are you an atheist? Why are you an atheist? And he's basically asking them what their psychological disposition is, right? Then when they tell him what their beliefs are, he gets pissed off and pivots it. He's like, no. And he's like, you don't know what you're doing. Are you a child? Are you drunk? Are you high? And they're like, wait, what are you asking me for? Are you asking me for some kind of philosophical argument? And then he gets upset because he doesn't want the community college lecture. It's like, look, the fundamental disconnect that Darth is constantly wrestling with is that philosophy, as defined by in philosophical literature, is defined as the belief that gods don't exist for the purposes of engaging in philosophical inquiry, right? But the other definition of atheist, the kind that people will use, is essentially used to describe the psychological state of not believing in gods, regardless of whether or not you got that philosophical background or not. And I feel like he pivots back and forth between this. Well, I don't care that you think there isn't a God. How does it follow that just because you think there isn't one, there actually isn't one? Okay, now he's trying to pull somebody's psychological belief thing. Like, now I want you to transfer that over into a philosophical argument for the impossibility of a God, which isn't necessarily, even if that person is philosophically inclined to mix that up, that's a position he's imposing on them. They're not necessarily going to argue in a philosophical that God can't exist, right? There's lots of different philosophical arguments for and against the existence of a God, but the idea that you're going to say, oh, well, no, what you need to tell me is why God's impossible. Like, no, I don't need to do that, because that's not where we started, and that's not where I was going. That's where you've grabbed me by the nostrils and pulled me over here, because that's the conversation that you want to have, and you're not being upfront about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But he wants you to demonstrate the impossibility of God without first demonstrating the possibility of God.
Exactly.
Right? So
yeah.
He's not even showing that God is possible at all. He just assumes the existence of God and then asks you to prove it impossible.
Yeah. And I think this is probably where a lot of people start getting dismissive of him, right? Because that's when you can kind of like blow him off and be like, look, this seems like it's either a massive burden shift, or, which he would just say is an atheist cliche, or what I think the problem is that when he's doing this, if somebody pushes it back onto him, like, look, you do need to provide some kind of evidence for God, or some kind of demonstration of God. The only thing he can provide, like the strongest things that he can provide, are another philosopher's arguments, right? Which, okay, you've got arguments for the existence of a God, but those aren't really, that's not a demonstrable proof of the existence of God. You just have this system kind of laid out, a philosophical statement. So it's like, okay, cool. Now, unless Darth wants to commit to the fact that, well, if a really smart philosopher follows the inference rules just right and manages to construct an argument that we can say is valid, and Darth believes that validity equals soundness, then he can basically run around with this sort of implicit notion that properly utilized logic is like a magic trick, right? Like, well, you're thinking after the rational mind of God, and therefore you've stumbled upon this truth. It has to be true because it's valid. That's the only thing that I can think that is going on deep inside his head. Like, well, there's these arguments for God and they're valid, therefore they're sound, therefore checkmate atheist. It's like, that's not.
I don't know. I've got this weird experience with presuppers that they think that a presupposition automatically makes it true. I've run into these people, and they kind of just firmly believe it to be true. And as long as they don't acknowledge that it's false, then it has to be true. It's a weird feeling talking to people like this.
I just wanted to address one of my mods here. This is from a few minutes back. He said, like if a theist would come in and not troll like Otangelo, I wouldn't touch them. Most of the side chatters and trolls trying to get attention. I just try to keep it down. No, and I get that, Michael, and I appreciate that. I don't know that Warren. Well, I think Warren can probably rise to the level of that, because some of the comments that he throws that are just like kind of Christian junk food. But yeah. But like I said, I mean, but I think he usually gets like 4 or 5 minutes, and then usually I think gets timed out quite a bit. But and it's not just you; other people have timed him out for kind of getting trolly. But so the message is kind of for anybody with mods. If Warren's around, just give him the benefit of the doubt. Let him talk his talk. And like I said, I think my brother's here, and my brother has a capacity to kind of troll trolls. So if you think that Warren's trolling, you haven't quite seen anything yet. I don't know that my brother's that talented at it, but he can be. Yeah, he can. I know that he Stanley Terry, that Yahweh, your way or Yahweh,
7 day calendar guy, the 7 day guy. Yeah,
now, that dude trolls like Jesus is Lord, like old school Jesus is Lord. He trolls hard. And my brother, I've seen some of the live chat back and forth between him and my brother absolutely confounds that guy. So, so it's like if you see him in there, like it is tempting. It's tempting to like take somebody out of the conversation like that. But and they do kind of suck the oxygen out. So, but yeah, but thanks, Michael, for for keeping an eye on stuff. Okay, let's get back into this.
Said that, and I never claimed to have ontological knowledge over whether God exists or not. So you're just sort of smuggling in an ontological truth into what you're asking me, which is epistemology. No. You've asked me for my epistemology, and then now you're asking me for an ontological truth.
I'm asking you to explain to me why the not God world is true. Is the not God world true because your provisional belief is inconsistent with God being true?
No.
Is that why God doesn't exist?
No, that doesn't make the ontological truth anything but the ontological truth. The truth will be the truth regardless of whether I believe it to be true or whether I believe it to be something else. You have asked me why I'm an atheist, and I say I have evidence of a lot of brains that have minds and no minds that don't have brains, and that is what I base my belief on. Well, I mean, I am talking.
Are you even listening?
I'm sort of talking at the moment.
I know that, but you're rambling.
I'm addressing.
You're rambling.
Yeah.
But put a pin in that, folks, for when Darth starts to ramble.
The lack of self-awareness is just incredible. You really have to marvel at the lack of self-awareness he has. It's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. I'm not a professional, but I would say it's damn near pathological. Roger Wenzel, thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it. All right, let's. So I think you've made a pretty good point here. I think this is one of the things that he doesn't like dealing with because you can tell because you can hear the stress levels in his voice increase when somebody's trying to like, hey, what about this ontological epistemological distinction? I mean, he got into a knockdown drag out with somebody. What's his name? I'm forgetting. He's a Christian and he's got a podcast. And Eddie, Brute Facts.
Oh, Brute Facts. Yeah, he's a nice guy too.
Yeah, and they got into it on Clubhouse. In fact, Tom Rabbit did a video about their exchange, and Eddie sounds like he's a little bit more knowledgeable in terms of philosophy. And
yes, he is. Yeah,
and he was trying to correct Darth's little game here, and Darth wasn't having it. And it got bad, right? Contentious is putting it mildly. And I think they've since kind of patched things up in that kind of weird passive-aggressive way I think a lot of Christians do on social media, like, well, we're brothers of Christ and we better not make each other look bad. Although Darth has not actually agreed to that. I don't think patching things up with Darth is ever a good move. So. Okay.
You're rambling like I'm a 9th grade student here. I'm a grown man. I'm 61 years old. I've talked with hundreds, if not thousands, of atheists from all different backgrounds, including a good number of atheists with PhDs. I've debated hundreds, if not thousands, of atheists, and you're just giving me a verbal runaround. I'm asking
weird that you're confusing ontology with epistemology. Then I mean, you're confusing the two.
I'm not finished, Mark.
Right.
I'm very much accustomed to people monologuing and running the clock out. I'm asking you a very succinct question. Okay.
Yeah.
God does not exist because you don't have a mental state.
No. I never said God does not exist. I believe God does not exist because of the factors that I have told you. Well, what do you want? Do you want the ontological truth or an epistemology?
I want you to explain to me in clear terms. I want you to explain to me in clear terms where you're not rambling and monologuing. Okay. Yeah. Where it would be clear to a 9th grader.
Right.
God does not exist because now, does God not exist because there is something else that is ultimate and absolute and that it's not God?
So you're conflating on.
Does God not exist because another God is there? I love this stuff. Like, oh, there's something else that's ultimate, right? All right, tell me what that is, right? That's the next step. It's like, okay, well, you need to tell me. Everybody's a foundationalist, don't you know? He'll never.
I had to come up with something, like I really did. It's very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's weird. I think it was Alex Malpass had written something about like when he does this kind of thing, when it gets to this point, and he's asking somebody for their substitution, kind of the substitution, like what is absolute and foundational in your worldview, and somebody thinks like, oh well, I guess I would go with like energy or something like that, right? And Malpass kind of put it in an interesting way. He's like, you don't need to answer this question because it's a malformed question, right? It's assuming that you have an absolute, right? He thinks that that's absolutely necessary. Yeah. And that's built into the question. And then if you give, but I think what Malpass ends up leaving out in his description is that if you're like, well, I don't know that there is such a thing as an absolute, right? Then Darth thinks that he's got you in check, right, at that point. And then as soon as you admit that there is no thing that is absolute or fundamental to all of reality, then he'll be checkmate, atheist. You've just committed, as he puts it, intellectual suicide. You can't say anything about anything because there's no grounds for anything. It's like, look, even if there is an absolute thing that's foundational and fundamental to the world ontologically, our epistemology doesn't allow us to be 100% certain about that in any way. And then so it therefore doesn't follow that just because I think that there is certainly something absolute and foundational, that there actually is. Like that fundamental disconnect between ontology and epistemology, that bridge that can't be crossed, Darth doesn't seem to get this.
No, it's not the only thing he doesn't get.
I do like the fact that for whatever reason, he thought that you were lecturing him like he was a ninth grader.
Well, the funny thing is, it's like, tell me like I'm a ninth grader. And then he goes, don't talk to me like I'm a ninth grader. I'm 61. It's like, you told me to explain it like you're a ninth grader.
Right, exactly. Explain it to me like I'm 5. And then he starts screaming, I'm not a child. Like, okay. All right. Oh, Darth.
Ontology with epistemology. I don't believe God exists.
Please focus on what
I never said I made a knowledge claim about God. Did I ever say I made a knowledge claim?
Okay. Knowledge is a subset of belief. So
Correct.
whether you want to classify it as knowledge or belief is irrelevant to my question to you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you believe God does not exist. So do you believe that indeed God does not exist because you have a belief, a provisional belief, that is inconsistent with the existence of God?
Do I believe, and just let me get, I want to get this straight, I don't want to misquote you, but do I believe that God indeed, and I'm not sure what your mean by indeed, so we'll get back to that, indeed does not
Really?
exist.
Are we going to do this, Mark?
I'm just going through trying to analyze the question.
You're going to parse the word indeed?
Well, I've got to parse it. I mean, you might mean many things by that, and I really need to know what you mean, because you basically said, you believe...
He's actually, Darth is demonstrating a lot of impatience here. This is, I mean, I got to hand it to you, Mark. I think you actually got him shook in record time, because he's automatically pulling this like, oh, we can't use common sense language. Well, I would have thought so, but I'm talking to you, so no, common sense language isn't on the table.
That word indeed, right? Does it indeed exist? Right. So what does that mean in that context? That was such a bewildering word to me. And I gotta be straight with you. I'm on the autism spectrum, so I don't notice this stuff a lot of the time. I don't notice people getting angry at me. I don't notice people getting worked up. I don't notice. I'm very picking that up. Right. So that's just something about me. It comes up later. Spoiler alert.
I think that can be help. That can be an advantage, and occasionally maybe a disadvantage in conflict resolution. But if you don't, my weakness is on the other side. Like I pick up on tone. Like I'm very attuned to people's like vocal patterns. I listen for that kind of stuff. I can tell when somebody is getting stressed, their blood pressure's up, they're getting angry, they're feigning civility, all that kind of stuff, which is probably why I got so interested in presuppositional apologetics, because the majority of people that I saw employing it on atheists were so passive aggressively hostile with it, right? And then after Ozzy, there's a great video from Tom Rabbit where Ozzy complains about this to a group of presuppers on Clubhouse, and then comes into Tom's room and then talks about why he's upset with us, and he gets it exactly right. I'm like, that's exactly why I got kind of obsessed with it, because you would watch these guys employ these kinds of questions. They would feign this civility, get their opponent worked up, right? And the literature is out there. If you go guys like Cy Ten Bruggencate and Greg Bonson, kind of the granddaddy of all this junk. Admitted that this stuff was designed to shut up the skeptic, to confound them, to anger them, to frustrate them, right? It was designed for that, but it's done in this way that, like, if you put it on playback, like, well, was I ever disrespectful to you? When did I referred to you as sir? It's like, we started off on a first name basis, and 20 minutes in, you're calling me sir, like we're engaging, like you're about ready to drop a gauntlet to, invite me to a duel. It's really kind of weird. And they just don't want to acknowledge it, because that's part of the charade. It's this pantomime of throwing that out there. And I
was just trying to have an honest conversation. Yeah.
And if you're trying to do that, you end up getting sucked into Darth's kind of, it really is kind of a script. For him, though, he's kind of dropped the pretense of trying to be polite about it. Like, I don't think he cares. Although he does tell people, like, did I do anything? Like, he'll try to do what, like, even the younger presuppers will do. Like, I was totally cordial. I was completely reasonable. They lost their cool. They lost their heads, and it's just like that to me, for me, I clue right in on that stuff. It's like, that's what you were looking for, right? Like, I mean, and I think that if they're honest with themselves, if that is what they're looking for, so they can chalk up what they think is a win, then they are the trolls. Right? They're looking to engage in a dialectic that frustrates and irritates people to a point that they react negatively. That's no different than being a troll and coming into a live chat and saying blatantly hostile or offensive things to get a negative reaction back from people, and then accuse them of being triggered. Oh, you're shook, you're triggered, you got your feelings up. Like, well, that's what you came in here to do, and it worked. So congratulations. Like, I really don't understand the motivations of people who troll like that, because I think it's odd. It's like, I poked a frog and now the frog is hurt. Oh, stupid frog. Like, it's baffling to me, but it smacks of like an Arrested Development kind of thing. But anyway, I've rambled enough. So
God indeed does not exist because you have a belief that God does not exist. Is that what you said?
Mark, you're giving me the verbal runaround, and you're verbally running the clock out. Okay, as I told you, without trying to brag,
wait, are we on a clock?
Give you a hard time, but I'm a straightforward individual. Like, I'm a straight shooter. Okay, I don't mince words.
I'm not getting that now, from you, but sure.
Okay, Mark, I'd like to finish. Okay, as I told you.
Great question. Are we on a clock? He says that all day. You're just trying to run the clock out. We're not in a time debate. We're having a conversation.
I've talked to and debated with thousands of atheists. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Many highly intelligent, highly educated.
I think it's hundreds. I don't know if it's thousands, because he's debated a lot of the same atheists repeatedly. My brother writes, Mark Reid, you can have an honest conversation with Darth, but you need just a pinch of dishonesty to keep him engaged. And actually, anti-social media. Nice. Hey, everyone, what happened to the super chat button? I think they switched it up. I think it's like a little medal or something like that. If you hover over it, it says show your support. And I think they just kind of put it all under one. I noticed it yesterday. I thought it was, it looks different, because I think the super chat used to be like a $sign, but now I think it's all the super chat stuff's under this, like this medal. So, and by medal, I mean like a medal of honor, kind of the medal worn around the neck.
Atheist as well.
Okay.
You sound like a certainly highly intelligent individual, but to me, you're giving me the verbal runaround. All I need to know is God does not exist, either because there's something else that is ultimate, that's not God, or there's another proposition that derives from what is ultimate that is not God. Which is it?
So does God not exist because something else is ultimate? And what was the last part of it?
That there's a proposition that derives from something that is ultimate that's not God.
That derives from not God. Proposition that
there's a proposition that you hold to that you consider demonstrable.
So what do you mean by
that?
Ultimate?
Mitigates against God.
What do you mean by
ultimate? Is that which would be whatever is absolute, unconditionally non-dependent and derivative, and being the absolute, everything that exists that is not itself derives and depends upon it.
Oh, is that all? I love it when he gets into that. John actually writes to both of us, but definition of honest response, term that specifically relates to the prescribed script responses of the great philosopher Darth delusions. Yeah.
Yeah.
This I mean, I've talked about this at length on a lot of my videos, his kind of obsession with this like ultimate thing. And I remember confronting J. Robin about this because there is I think an interesting paper from a philosopher up in Canada where he basically just goes after the concept of ultimate. And he actually lays it out in a much more thoroughgoing way, because I think for guys like Darth, J. Robin, and other precepts, if they're using this kind of thing, it's not even just precepts. I think it's any apologist, when they start approaching this thing, they want to talk about an ontological ultimate, a God as a ground of all beings, so that they can call the skeptic's idea of reality into question, which is, I think, interesting, because instead of making a strong claim for why this God is why this God exists and why it's real and why the evidence points to it, a lot of the first move is to try to figure out what kind of skeptic they're dealing with, and then try to pull the rug out from under the skeptic, whatever their worldview is, to make them doubt reality, so that they can hit them with the second punch, which is, okay, well, now that I've got you in the state of philosophical vertigo, here's Jesus. Now you've got an anchor to hang on to. I really do think that that's what they're trying to do. It's to generate a certain level of anxiety about your position, especially if you're not used to talking about it. And then if they can get you worked up and pissed off enough about that, they can kind of slowly lure you over. It's almost like Christian version of negging, like pickup types.
Cool negging, I love it. Yeah, absolutely.
I think my brother says he's asking Mark if he believes X robbed the bank, but Mark doesn't believe X robbed the bank. So then he's asking him, who was it that robbed the bank if it wasn't X? yeah, assuming that, like, and Mark's maybe not convinced that that either a bank was robbed or that there was a bank to begin with. Right. Yeah. But yeah. And then Darth's just kind of assuming, well, there has to be this absolute foundation. Don't you know that? Well, I don't know that I know that. I'm not sure if that's the case. Right. And the interesting thing is how he puts that. Like, you have to know that this is you wouldn't know. Right. Part of Stephen Maitson, the guy that wrote this paper on against ultimacy, is kind of talking about it. Like, the notion of something being ultimate in any of these ways realistically probably breaks down, because it runs into a lot of catastrophic consequences, but also epistemologically, we wouldn't be able to identify it anyway. Right. And I don't think Darth really pays attention to that limitation. He just blows over that. No, we can know it because we
know it.
Maybe what's that?
He believes it's God, so he thinks he can know it, and he knows it because he's got the truth of God to tell him that's what it is. It's really just a circular argument, isn't it?
Yeah, it just seems to be.
So I think that sort of you're asking what something is the ultimate. So everything relies on that thing.
In order to falsify God,
yeah,
you have to do one of two things. You're either going to have to present what is ultimate, which would be a negator for God, because God is in the category of ultimate. Or you're going to have to give me some demonstrable proposition that derives from what is ultimate, that is not God. You have.
Notice it has to be those two things. It can't be just calling into question the notion of what is absolute.
Or it can't be you have to have him demonstrate that a God actually exists. The God exists, and you have to prove that it doesn't exist.
I think he tries to say, I think they actually try to hinge this on like the kind of the contradict, the impossibility of the contrary. Like, yeah. Well, if everybody knows that there's an absolute fundamental thing, we all agree that that's what it is. We just call that God, right? And denying that puts you in a state of like, I don't know, epistemological or ontological nihilism, right? But that doesn't really follow from that. At least as far as I know, because you know things provisionally, and I don't get why they start there, but then they'll get and Darth thinks that this is fine. There's some preceptors. Well, if you read Van Til, there's a notion coming out of Van Til and Bonson that Sye ten Bruggencate internalized quite a bit, where if you start appealing to evidences and you believe that you're engaging in a precept, if you're engaging in evidences, then you've ceded too much ground to the skeptic, right? You
Right.
need to keep them in this bind of trying to justify an absolute. And Darth doesn't seem to have a problem with that, and I don't think any of the amateur presuppers on YouTube or Clubhouse or Discord do either. They'll kind of flirt with arguments within the evidentialism thing, and then if they get tired of it or bored with it, or they think that they're being backed into a corner, then all of a sudden, well, wait a minute, how do you justify what you know? How do you ground anything that you know, right? Like now it starts shifting to like, now I'm, instead of dealing with this evidence thing that I started, I'm now going to bring up a philosophical argument to try to call into question their capacity to know anything at all, right? I'm going to try to frame them as radical skeptics, and then try to force them into a situation where if they're going to say that they're being intellectually coherent and consistent, they need to acknowledge that they're radical skeptics, right? And it's like, that's not where we started. We started with evidence.
Yeah.
It's just some stunning. I really, a lot of this, I think, it's just gaslighting. It's just pranks and tricks.
Have to do one of those two things. If you don't fulfill either two of those criterion, then you haven't falsified God.
Right. Well,
Right?
I
So
sort
you
of
understand.
Yeah, I sort of split it into, I have a apparent reality that I interact with, and an absolute reality, which is basically the ontological existence of things, the ontological truth of things. I'm not sure
Which
where
question are you answering? The first or the second one?
Well, I mean, you're asking what's ultimate, so I'm trying to get at that.
No, I'm asking you, which one are you answering? The first one or the second one?
What do you mean? Aren't they the same thing? The proposition
Okay.
that
I'll repeat
derives
it again.
from...
In order to falsify God
Yeah.
as ultimate, you're going to have to tell me what is ultimate that is not God, or you're going to have to tell me that there's a proposition that is demonstrable that derives from what is ultimate that's not God. You have to do one or the other. Otherwise, you can't falsify or negate God. So
Okay.
Which do you choose?
Yeah, so I can demonstrate the proposition that derives from absolute reality, and that is by basically acknowledging that because I directly experience sensations, therefore something must exist, therefore an absolute reality must exist.
No, you're not understanding the question. Okay.
Well, it's kind of hard to pass.
Reality is an abstraction that quantifies the set of all real things.
I'm sorry,
I'm asking you. Okay,
that sounded like you said reality isn't real.
no, I said reality is an abstraction that
Well,
quantifies
abstractions
the set of. May I
aren't
finish,
real.
please?
Abstractions aren't real.
Reality is a term. I'm trying to explain it to you. When we invoke the word reality,
Sure.
okay, typically what is referred to in English is that we're referring to the set of all real things. Okay. Now, all I'm asking you is, in order to falsify God, your position is not God. In order to negate or falsify God, since God is in the category of what is ultimate, and I've already defined ultimate, you're either going to have to tell me what is ultimate, or you will use a proposition, a demonstrable proposition, as a defeater for God. But that proposition must derive and depend upon what is ultimate. Otherwise, you don't have a defeator. Now,
That doesn't make any sense. So it's like, okay, so what you need to do of that second one is essentially engage in the same exact, in the same problematic logic that he's engaging in. This idea that, okay, if you're going to issue forth a proposition, it needs to be grounded in something that is certainly ultimate, right? But that's what's being called into question by the skeptic, because as soon as he starts talking about this kind of stuff, like, oh, well, God is the foundation, and then we can be like, okay, we can be I don't know if he's comfortable with this, but it seems like what they want to say is that God is as certain as our experiences of our own subjective sense, sensory input kind of thing. Like, we presuppose that we are engaging in some kind of reality around us because of what our senses are taking in, right? So that's kind of the thing that we presuppose. And he seems to want to make God as elemental an assumption as that. And I don't know if these ever actually come right out and said that. I think I asked Jay Robin about this once, and he was cagey on it.
Well, I personally just think of sort of what your senses engage with as an apparent reality. So I know there's things in my apparent reality that just aren't true. Like I can see a mirage; it's not actually water. I can see. I know that there's frequencies of radiation bouncing off things. It's not actually colors. It's this kind of stuff is, I guess, what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, hard solipsism kicks in, and how do you know you're not a brain in a vat kind of thing? It's like, well, I guess that sort of the absolute reality that I'm talking about under hard solipsism is, your apparent reality is the simulation that you're in, and absolute reality is the brain in the vat kind of thing, or the vat. I guess that makes sense to me. I don't know if it's philosophically sound or anything.
No, I mean, I think that does. I think that's kind of the distinction that I get the impression that a lot of these guys are missing that, right? Like if they want to appeal to this kind of Boltzmann brains thing where I'm like, oh, you could just be a brain in a vat. Yeah, but probably not epistemologically, right? Like ontologically, it could be the case that that's what reality is outside the capacities that I have to perceive the world around me. And instead I'm being fed an input that is making me think that the reality around me, it's all very matrix-like, right?
But epistemology back at the last road stop, we're way past that at this point.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, if they can concede that, it's like that's exactly what we mean when we're talking about that gap between epistemology and ontology, right? They're trying to say that God is the thing outside the vat. Right. Yeah. And that you can somehow know that. It's no, you can't. Right. That's the whole point. That's one of the entailments of that thought exercise. And I don't know if they just kind of refuse to acknowledge that, or if it just doesn't occur to them. I think for them, there's been enough apologists that have used the Boltzmann brain example as a way to try to, they think, okay, well, I'm going to throw this at a skeptic in order to make the skeptic accept radical skepticism. Right. Which isn't something that a skeptic or, anyone really, they don't have to accept that. Right. But then they kind of lose track of the fact that like, okay, but by employing that, right, God could exist in a state where what better way for God to appear as a man? If human beings are brains in vats and all God has to do is appear within the simulation. Right. And it still has meaning. It still has purpose. It still solves everything. But the ontological reality is that he exists outside the vat. And our reality is that, that we experience epistemologically is the simulation that he's programmed for us. So, but I think what they would then end up having a problem with, they're like, well, no, now you're living a lie. And God doesn't lie. And it's like, well, but God doesn't have to lie in that case. God has created you as a creature with limited senses. So this is the most that you can experience per his gifts unto you. That's what you get, right? It's not a lie. It's just incomplete. And yeah. And yeah, my brother asked, is Godless Girl? No, I think she had to leave. I don't see her in here. And she didn't say anything in the private chat. So, but if she does come back, I'll let her know. And Mark, we're past midnight for you. So if you do need to leave, let me know.
I really wanted to get feedback on because you and your brother, way more about philosophy than I do. I happily acknowledge that. And I wanted to know if my arguments had any merit or not. I was really looking for feedback on whether it is a valid argument or a sound argument. And
Yeah, as far as because I've gotten into philosophy by virtue of doing this stuff. So it's just been, I'm just an enthusiast and an amateur myself. But I've been around the block a few times with the precept thing, analyzing it. But I think that you are on the right track in the sense that you're just trying to engage in a conversation. And Darth is already getting frustrated with the fact that you're trying to suss out what he means by certain word choices and things like that. And that's where this stuff gets really frustrating. Yeah, as far as what your argument is, I think that you're doing as well as I think anybody can in an initial encounter with Darth's questions, because like you said, they're not very clear. There's a lot of weasel words.
You have to pick one of those two, otherwise you can't falsify God. So which do you choose? Now, this is the third time I've asked the question.
Absolute reality cannot be an abstraction, because the one property it has is that it is real. So I refute that completely. I think that even though my apparent reality may be separated in different things, I think ultimate or absolute reality is just one thing. And I'm
not talking about reality, Mark.
And the differences are actually kind of an illusion when you get down to it.
Can you even hear me?
Well, yeah, I'm explaining to you why.
I didn't ask you to give me an exposition on reality. I asked you.
I'm sharing it with you anyway.
Ultimate, or what proposition that you use to negate God, what
Well, I
ultimate
just
does
told
it
you.
depend upon? I want to know what is ultimate.
I just told you
What is that?
an absolute reality, which is one
No,
thing, even though
that's incoherent.
I don't know why he's. This is weird. I think he's. I don't know if he gets into his whole set theory thing, but Jay writes. I think Mark lasted longer than some of the actual philosophers Dark has talked to. Yes, yeah, I think he did. Although it's kind of weird because a lot of the times that Darth has talked to actual philosophers, it was with Canadian Catholic, and Canadian Catholic would yank Darth back when he started noticing that the philosophers were starting to get pissed. Yeah, I don't know how long they could have gone if they'd been in one. I think maybe Lawrence Krauss is not really a philosopher; he's just a physicist. But I think Lawrence Krauss has probably talked to Darth the longest, and Lawrence has yelled at him. Like Lawrence Krauss hates this guy.
well, a lot of people hate this guy. Let's be real.
Yeah. Maya writes, most philosophers get easily tired of Darth telling them how their own field works. Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, the fact I can't remember who it was. I think it was Gardner or Garfield, Jay Garfield, shushed him like a 5-year-old. Like shush. When I explain something to you, shut up and listen. And Darth was not having that.
You know, want to know why?
No,
Okay,
well, I
because
mean,
when you say reality, is reality the set of all real things?
no, because a set is an abstraction, and the one property of reality is that it's
so
real.
reality is not the set of all real things. So there's something.
Well, let me ask a
lies
question.
outside of reality.
Is reality real?
Okay, Mark, I'm asking you how you're defining reality. Do you
Interesting
define reality
dodge.
as the set of all real things?
No.
Okay, what is reality?
Well, so I think my apparent reality is the set of all things, but an absolute reality is the actual ontology behind it, as I told you earlier.
Right.
So I'm asking you, do you think reality is real? It's a really simple question.
Okay, it's like if I say, do you think bananas are real? Yeah, I think bananas are real.
So do I.
Reality to me is the set of all real things. Everything that's in that set is real. Now, what I want to know from you is this: when we conceptualize reality, and by the way, your non-acceptance of the definition is extremely bizarre. Okay. Because when people invoke reality in the English language, they're generally referring to the set of all real things or a particular subset of that. Okay. Now, what I want to know from you is, what is it that is ultimate from which all things depend and derive? If you answer reality, that's an incoherent answer, which I will be glad to explain to you. So is that your answer?
Well, I mean, I don't know where absolute reality came from, but because I don't have access to it. I can demonstrate
Mark,
through my argument that I know it exists, but I don't actually have access. All I've got access to is my apparent reality, as does everybody.
Can you tell me what is ultimate?
What is ultimate? So by ultimate, you meant... sorry, I must have...
absolute, unconditionally non-dependent and derivative from which all things derive and depend.
No, I don't think I can tell you that. I don't think I know what something is that what all facts
do you
depend.
believe that something is ultimate?
I don't know.
Okay, so you have nothing that is identifiably ultimate then, is that correct?
I have nothing that's, well, I mean, I do have absolute reality, so, I mean, there's that.
No, that is not...
Why not?
That is not an answer that is germane to the
Why not?
question, okay?
Why
All
not?
I want to know is, do you have an identifiable, defensible stipulation of what is ultimate?
Yeah, absolute reality. I see it more
as that's incoherent. Okay, let me explain to you
as
why.
a summation of the universe, the cosmos, and all
Mark, can you
things
listen for a
combined.
second?
Well, I mean, I've been
Mark,
listening.
Can you listen for a second? I'm trying to explain to you by saying absolute reality is ultimate is not coherent. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
I want you to imagine when we use the word reality, we're referring to the set of all real things. Okay, can you accept that working definition?
I would accept that for my apparent reality. I wouldn't for
can you accept that working
reality.
definition, Mark?
I would for my apparent reality. I wouldn't for.
Okay, so you're accepting that working definition that reality is the set of all
well, let's
real
just,
things.
for the sake of the
Now,
argument, just say that's the case.
Mark, are you even listening, or are you just trying to give me a monologue? No, I'm asking very truncated questions, and I don't need a monologue back. Okay?
He's not really asking truncated questions. He's haranguing now, right? Like this is what you call a haranguing. Like I'm not getting the answer that I want, so I'm going to keep asking the question in a variety of different ways until I get a response I want.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm just saying for the sake of the...
And I actually kind of feel bad for Erica here because I think that in times when praise has had these kinds of blow-ups, with some of the toxic personalities that he gets into his show. Everybody from Smokey to Gavin at his worst. Well, Gavin pales in comparison to Smokey Sane. And now Darth. You know, I don't think Erica is a big fan of Darth Dawkins or any of these guys. And Praise will patch things up. You know, Eric will be right there like, no, you shouldn't have taken his crap, and he's being a jerk, and you know, and then Praise comes back with, at least I think it's her. Usually, she's you know, like, you know, hey, this guy's toxic.
All credit where credit's deserved. Erica, Olive, Sparrow, and another few people, Craze's audience were like, "We're so sorry to you," kind of thing, and I'm like, "No, it's not your fault. You know, that's got nothing to do with you." But they were very, very nice to me. You know, afterwards, I don't think a lot of his audience agrees with this kind of, you know, harangue the atheist kind of thing. I really think they don't like it. Yeah, and I think most of them get that, like, you know, Darth just makes Christianity look really unappealing. So,
I'm well accustomed to people filibustering me.
Well, I'm just saying, for the sake of the argument, let's assume.
Shooter. Now,
okay.
When you say, I'm asking you, what is it that is ultimate? I've already defined ultimate for you. Okay. Now, Are you saying, and I don't need a lecture, are you saying
that's so thoughtful and helpful of Darth? I've defined absolute for you, so do what I say.
Charitable of him. How very charitable.
I mean, I like what Jody's written here. He says, why is it doing that? I can't read it. Oh, StreamYard, why do you have to be so difficult? Let's pull it up here where I can see it.
Mark, you are doing brilliantly against Darth. It's so hard to talk to narcissists if you have no prior experience. Great learning in the moment. Thanks, Jody. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and that I mean, yeah, dealing with this kind of stuff. I think that was one of the things that threw me off and has thrown off other people dealing with him, is that they start having what they think is a conversation with him, and then they're just like, they start getting frustrated and confounded. Like, why is this guy making everything so hard? Yeah. Like, he's just making everything it's just like pulling teeth with this guy. Like, I'm trying to tell you what I think, and then you're automatically, and then you turn around like, no, that's not the answer that I needed. That's not an answer to my question. Like, well, that's the answer I've got. So
but it's not the answer.
Right. Yeah. And that is like, okay, so, you know, as soon as somebody really, I mean, I don't mean to generalize, but if somebody blatantly says that, especially as often as somebody like Darth does, I mean, that's a pretty good example. Like, oh, did you want to have a conversation? Because if you're looking for specific answers to your questions, then maybe you need to go ask some physicists or some philosophers, right?
Sure.
Like, it sounds like I can't provide you satisfactory answers. I can only provide you the answers that I can give you my opinion. And if that doesn't work for you, then you need to just, you need to go find someone else. If you're actually looking to get informed of something new, well, he's had the opportunity to talk to people like, Lawrence Krauss and people like that, and he treated them just as shabbily. Yeah, he squandered those opportunities.
Let's face it, this is just the opinion of, my opinion is just one random clown on the internet. I don't know why it's so important to him. You know what I mean? Like, why is he so mad that someone disagrees with him? It's just one dude on the internet.
Yeah, it's really weird how, like, because and I think you said you can keep your distance from these kinds of things, but at this point, the way that he invests in this whole thing, right? Like, this is like that phenomenon. Somebody's wrong on the internet, and they can't let it go. They're like, I am going to argue with this person until they see my point of view, and that really does seem like he gets suckered into that. But he doesn't have the self-awareness to kind of pull himself out and kind of like correct his behavior. And then the longer it goes on, he starts treating the person that's not agreeing with him 100% like a threat. And then he needs to insult them and denigrate them. And that's what he does afterward. Well, they were a clown and they were a liar and they were treating me shabbily. And now I bet they'll stalk me and slander me and libel me. That's been his drama. That's been his pattern. And it's like, it didn't need to do that, but he's mixed it up with people in the past where he's played the exact same thing. And he knows enough to know that, like, there are certain people he's done this to, and they're much more sensitive, right? They took it seriously. They were hurt, right? And then he blamed them for feeling bad after he abused them and treated them poorly. And then he's just shocked and appalled that these people will hound him. They've made it a personal goal to get revenge on him in some small way in social media. And he's just like, oh, these people are just stalkers. Like, what did you you had to know that that was going to happen, right? You set out to make enemies, and you're surprised that enemies exist. It's weird.
Yeah.
Saying that reality is what is ultimate.
If your definition, and as I said, for the sake of the argument, we'll assume that you're using your definition, then no, I wouldn't say that the set of all real things is absolute or ultimate. No.
Okay, what is ultimate, Mark?
It is. Let's see if I can describe an absolute reality in a way that is.
No, I want you to tell me what ultimate is.
Well, it sounds
what is it that
like
all things, that is a concrete one, that all things derive in.
Yeah, so it sounds like to me that you're asking
one.
for what is ultimate in a way that I can't answer in any way except to say God. Is that what you're doing?
No, what I want to know from you is I want you to tell me from your perspective what you believe to be what is singularly concrete and not an abstract notion that all things derive and depend upon.
Well, I've been trying, but you keep interrupting me. So maybe just let me spiel it out.
I interrupted you because
and
you're
then
filibustering.
I want you to explain it to me, but I don't want you to filibuster. Like, well, I don't know if Darth ever takes comfort in this, but in the conversation that you guys were having, you were incapable of filibustering because you guys weren't in some kind of political forum. So filibustering, I love it. He loves that word because I think he thinks it's like an SAT, gold star winning word, one of those thesaurus words that he can throw out there. This is, but now he has shifted it now. So now he's trying to clarify it. So I got in trouble for this. Somebody criticized me about this because he did this to Jason Torn. And in the video that I did covering their conversation on Clubhouse, he was basically asked, Darth was pretty blatant in asking Jason Torn. He wanted Jason Torn to describe to Darth what his equivalent of a God was, right? It needs to meet these things. He's a concrete one, the foundation of all things, the reason for all possibility and impossibility, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And it's like, okay, the way that you've started to ground that is essentially what you want is the skeptic's equivalent of a God, right? Mm-hmm. Or at the very least, the skeptic's equivalent of what is foundational if they're kind of assuming that horn from Agrippa's trilemma, the foundationalist kind of position. And it's like, well, you don't know that person has that, right? If the person denies, or calls into question the existence of any such kind of ultimate thing, Darth basically just says that they're done, right? It's over, right? And then when he's sitting there,
he should be backing that up with something that his claim that he's making.
Yeah, and the weird thing is that the point of the Agrippan trilemma or the Munchausen trilemma is that it's a thought experiment to show how, whether it's coherentism, infinitism, or foundationalism, we lack the ability to ground certain things. But there are certain things that we would use coherentism for, and that's how we would establish like a truth or a fact. And I might be using truth sloppily here, or it's foundational to something, or it's infinite. There's infinitism, like you can just there is no, but all of them lead to problems, right? The foundational thing assumes something that might not be there. Coherentism is everything is kind of connected to everything else, and infinitism has an infinite regress problem, supposedly, right? So they all have these entailments of these difficulties, right? And the weird thing about it is I don't know that I think Darth has described himself as being a coherentist for whatever that means. I don't think he understands the Agrippan trilemma to know that like saying you're a coherentist or a foundationalist or anything. I mean, I think amongst philosophers it is maybe a thing that you would say, but to me, I think it's just the way people deal with epistemology. Those three horns come up in terms of justifying what we think we know. But he really is sort of like, no, the other ones don't matter. It's a foundational thing. There is this one ultimate thing, a concrete one, singular and responsible for the existence of absolutely everything else. And you need to tell me, what is it? What is that thing, right? Because I'm telling you it's the Christian God. What do you think it is? Mm-hmm. And he doesn't get that that's, he's front loading this up with something that doesn't exist, right? And if somebody's like, well, I don't have that, then he just thinks that they've automatically lost, which is like, okay, so you think, I'm sorry, I'm rambling on this. I really do think that if you're not a foundationalist, then you're a loser. If you try to justify it as in a coherentist kind of way, or you try to do the really tough thing and justify it in an infinitism kind of way, you're just not going to win. but the foundational one, you don't have to worry about that. God's the basis for everything, so no worries. So I guess for somebody like Darth, I mean, I guess the Agrippa trilemma just isn't a thing, you know. But yeah,
Agrippa sphere, I guess. Like there's only one prong.
Yeah, there's only one way of looking at it. And clear, I mean, he does do that. But what I think he's now doing to you in this point, like now he wants you, he doesn't want you to say that it's reality. He doesn't want you to talk about an absolute reality independent of your senses. He wants you to refer to a concrete one, which is also weird because he hasn't gone over this. He thinks that reality is just a description of an abstract set. Reality is a word as an abstract, and then there's just this, the way that you're using it is like there is all this stuff outside of our knowledge, right? And I can know some of it, but I probably can't know all of it, right? But it exists independent of whether I think it's there or not. That's an ultimate reality. And he wants to like make this claim like, oh, well, you're appealing to an abstract. Like, and I don't think that you are, especially for the purposes of a casual discussion. But now he's trying to zoom in on like, no, it's got to be a concrete one. Give me the concrete one that makes all this possible. And this is where a lot of people, I don't know if you do it, but a lot of people, especially if they're more scientifically minded, might appeal to something like energy, right? To try to give him that. And then he'll, which will send him spiraling. Shape-shifting monkey. Thank you for the super chat. Dede sleeps with an audio source on his Panasonic. Yeah. Yep. All right, here we go.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're asking the questions, and when I try to explain it, you're sort of cutting me off. It's very difficult to get something out when you won't let me talk. So, as I said, there is an apparent reality. We're all aware of that. We all agree on it. We all dwell on it. You know, sort of, there is something behind that, which I know that from my senses are imperfect. There is an ontological truth behind that, that I can put an argument for. As I said, I experience sensations directly. That means that there must be something exists, something real there, or else, and I'm not in any way, due to hard solipsism, saying what it is. I am just saying there is something behind it. I think that is, or I believe that is, the sum total of the universe, the cosmos, everything that exists as one thing that just seems to be in individual parts. Like I think I'm here, I think you're there. That's my apparent reality. The set of all real things, as you said. I do not think that's the case. I think it is all one thing.
Okay. Have you told me what is ultimate, Mark?
Yeah, I just did.
No, you didn't. I listened very carefully. I kept my mouth shut the whole time.
Sure.
All I got you there was monologuing. You did not tell me what was singularly concrete as opposed to an abstract notion that all things derive and depend upon. What is that singular concrete thing that is not an abstraction?
Yeah, so I already said, so I already said absolute reality, and you wouldn't take that for an answer. That's the label.
So reality, so what is ultimate is the set of all real things. Yeah, get rid of Josh.
What I don't get, and do
get rid of Josh here, please.
Do excuse me. What I don't get is
so that's interesting. I don't know if Josh and Praise get along okay, but Josh, otherwise known as the realistic nihilist, the two of them have a very contentious relationship on Clubhouse and did on Discord, I think. But there, I mean, 30 minutes into this conversation, Darth, I think, has been around for about 20 or so. Talking with you, and he's already barking orders to Praise to get rid of guests. He has not.
Oh, it doesn't stop there.
God, like this is exactly. I mean, this is how it started when he got to the point where he got so peaked that he was demanding mod controls, and then was kicking out and banning people that were longtime viewers of Praise, fans of his show. Just amazing. And he's right back into it. Like no adjustment in behavior. So
why do I have to come up with something ultimate and all of these designators to simply believe based upon the evidence that a God does not exist? Well, why is that the case?
Because if you don't, it will not be rationally demonstrable. Now,
that sounds like a non sequitur to me.
You said reality. Is reality the set of all things? What is ultimate?
Apparent reality is the set of all things.
Am I correct in understanding that your position is that the set of all real things that you label reality is what is ultimate?
No.
Okay, Mark, what is it that is ultimate?
I've already told you.
Singularly concrete Okay,
All right,
I'm asking
John.
the question again because all I heard
Yeah,
was a monologue.
look, you've
with
had
no
your answer.
specificity. I want to know. Listen, I'll shut up in a second.
You've had your answer. I'm not going through it again.
I want to know from you what is singularly concrete, and not an abstraction, that all things derive and depend upon. What is that singular concrete thing?
Absolute reality.
Okay, is reality the set of all real things?
No, not absolute reality.
Okay.
Our apparent reality
can you tell me? Okay, so absolute reality is a singular concrete thing.
Yes.
Okay, what is that?
I've explained it like 3 times now. If you're not paying
all
attention,
I heard
I'm not
was
going
a
to
word
explain it again.
salad, sir.
Okay. It seems like when he says all he heard was a word salad, it sounds like at that point he is actually acknowledging that you have described, that you have explained it. He just either wasn't paying attention or he didn't get it.
I think he's smart enough to have gotten it. I think he is just saying, I am not accepting this answer. You know, I cannot accept this answer because it doesn't go with my script. That's basically what he's doing.
Yeah. Yep.
I've been in thousands of debates and I've heard people explain things.
Yeah, and I've heard
that, you know, here's an appeal to, like, I've been in thousands of debates and I've heard people explain things. So I'm now an expert on how things should and should not be explained. And what you did failed my expertise.
Yeah.
Sure, Darth. Okay. Solid props. And this is some more inductive reasoning. You know, he always gets after people for doing probabilistic thinking, probabilistic reasoning. Like, I've talked to 100 atheists and all of them are scumbags. Therefore, all atheists are scumbags. Like,
yeah,
okay, that's fallacious thinking. And you came to that fallacious conclusion by using inductive reasoning, the thing that you claim to hate. He does this all the time. And props to, I was having this conversation with my brother a few days ago. We were talking about that, about how he does this kind of thing, which I don't know that anybody's really caught on, but
complaints out of those thousands of people about you not listening. I'm sure you do have a decent IQ. I'm 100% sure you do have a decent IQ, but it sounds like to me when I explained that the sum total of the cosmos, everything outside of it, and everything that existed, will exist, and ever existed, you basically say, no, I'm not accepting that. And it seems like the only answer you will accept is God.
You just said.
Yeah, you keep going back.
You are putting words into my mouth.
Going back to basically saying, no. You keep going back. You keep going back to saying the set of all real things, and I've already said that's not the case.
You don't give them a chance to answer.
When you say, "Oh, I've been sitting here silent quite a long time, listening to him go on and on and on and on."
When was he sitting there silent?
Never. It didn't happen.
He's been taking every opportunity that he can to complain about what you're saying or not saying.
Yeah, so AJ Hebb, we should rename the Black Swan fallacy to the scumbag atheist fallacy. I don't think so. So the Black Swan is when you say something cannot necessarily exist because we've only seen these things that do exist. If you say, hey, provisionally I think that this thing doesn't exist because all I've seen, that's okay. That's not the Black Swan fallacy, right?
Yeah, the Black Swan fallacy is saying that there necessarily aren't any swans that aren't white, right? Like all the swans that I've seen up to this point have been white. Therefore, swans are only white. And so, no, that's that's when things get kind of fallacious. And I think maybe in Darth's case, maybe maybe if he was careful about it, he could do that. Like, all the atheists that I've run across so far are slanderous scumbags. Therefore, I think that it's safe to assume that most of them are. Like, okay.
But again, which I don't have a problem with. If you want to make inductive leaps, then sure.
Right. And it's like, yeah, okay, if you want to do something like that, fine. But if let's not catch you then in a conversation screaming at somebody who's appealing to inductive reasoning and saying that that's not sufficient, right? And then saying, like, I want a deductive argument from you for why God can't exist. And then they're like, okay, well, isn't there some element of induction predicated before the deductive argument gets into effect, which is something that he's brought up, he's actually said, and then he just gets pissed off and will probably tell you, you're not answering my question, or all I'm hearing is word salad. I've been sitting here quietly and patiently like a good little boy while you've been bullying me. It's like, I think you've got this reversed. And yeah, thanks, Jay, for that PDF on concrete and specific language. He says that PDF gives a good definition of concrete and abstract.
Okay, what you don't like is the fact that I'm being confrontational, that I'm getting a whole long monologue without getting a clear answer. Now, is absolute reality, does anything else exist independent or outside of absolute reality, Mark?
No.
Okay, so absolute reality then would be the set of all real things.
No, that's our apparent reality.
Okay, well, that's what your position is now incoherent, okay? Because you see, you want to talk about absolute reality. Yeah, get rid of Jack. Who keeps on bringing these people in here? Praise.
I don't know, but who is this really Jack Angstreich though? Or is this a troll?
Don't even entertain this. Just get
Why?
rid of
What's
Okay.
wrong with Jack
Get rid of
Angstreich?
him. Thank you.
Why? Which
Why?
channel?
Because those individuals are stalkers, Eric.
Well, I'd like to talk to these people coming in. I find
Mark.
what?
So
I mean,
absolute reality is absolute reality all encompassing or not?
Well, I would like to talk.
Wait a minute. So he just gets rid of Erica, Sparrow, and Olive?
Apparently so.
What the hell?
He's not a sharer. I don't know what to tell you. This is the first encounter with him, and I was like, because I just wait till the end. I want to hang around because at the end of this, and when I got kicked. To the people coming in, I don't know why we have to kick people out.
I'm giving you very circumspect, truncated questions.
I'm very curious. And the John Adams guy's gone. I'm curious to see who's actually doing that. Like, because Praise had told people that he wasn't going to give Darth controls. So if Darth doesn't have controls, that means Praise is kicking all these people out.
I've got no idea. I mean, I don't even know who kicked me, but you know,
that's so strange.
And I'm getting a monologue, and you're not giving me clear-cut, specific answers. Okay. Now, when you say absolute reality,
yes,
is absolute reality everything that is, or is there something that lies in existence with independence from absolute reality?
It is the one thing that is real. That is the entirety of anything that is.
Okay. Is when you say it is the one thing, is that a concrete one or an abstract one?
Concrete.
Which conceptualizes a set of.
Because the problem is no. Just let me speak for a second. The problem is that if it's a set, it's an abstraction, and you keep saying, is it concrete or abstract? And it's like, well, if it's reality and it's an abstraction, then it's not real. And then you've sort of put yourself in a position where you're saying that reality is not real.
Abstraction. An abstraction. A single term that is an abstraction can quantify two or more concrete things. It's not that the two or more things are abstractions themselves. Now, when you talk about reality as being one, you are either invoking that as a concrete one or an abstract one, where the abstract one collectivizes two or more concrete things. So which is it?
Well, the problem here is that I can say that my body is one thing. The problem is it's made up of cells that are also one thing.
Can you please answer the question?
And there's other things that are just I'm addressing what you're saying. And sort of, so when you're saying that, there's nothing that prevents a reality and an absolute reality of being one thing, whereas we are parts of that thing. Just as the cells
you're
are part
not
of the body.
directly answering my question.
I am.
It's like you're giving me a community college lecture. I'm not trying to be rude.
I'm just explaining how you're wrong.
I know when somebody is filibustering me. Okay.
Well, no, I'm just explaining how you're wrong.
What I want to know from you is simply this. Okay.
Right.
When you tell me what is ultimate, is it one concrete thing?
Yes.
Or is it one thing where it is an abstraction that collectivizes two or more concrete things? It's either one or the other.
So this will be the last time I'll explain this, because I've already.
I think he knows automatically that the second choice is just kind of contradictory, right? Yeah, this is weird.
That's where he wants me, so he will not accept the other. This goes on because he won't. It's not. He's not giving me two options. I mean, he's saying two options, but he won't accept one.
Yeah, exactly.
Been through it multiple times, and I'm kind of getting.
No, you've been giving me mumbo jumbo, Mark.
No, I haven't. You haven't been listening. So my perception of reality is apparent because my senses can be wrong. But
Mark,
I believe that there is one thing which is an absolute reality that we are all a part of and connected. That we're not individuals. That in essence we are all just one and part of the massive everything absolute reality that exists.
Mark,
our apparent reality says that we are separate people, but we're not.
You're in this tunnel vision boat, okay? Like you're autistic, okay? What was the question?
I am autistic. Is that a problem?
No. Yeah, it is a problem because you're not focusing on my question.
No. Yes. What? Does he even? He doesn't know what he's talking about. This is precious. Oh Lord. Yeah. Oh my God. No. Yes. Like,
yes.
And yes, the issue of you being on the spectrum somewhere is for him is that you're not addressing his question. Right. Oh God, it's all and he gets offended when people are like, Darth, it seems to me like you're always making everything about yourself, right? That's a great example of doing it right there.
To me, I found it funny that he went no, and then thought, wait, that's a flaw I can use. Yes, that's a problem. Like, it's just
right, because he's gonna go and get ableist on you in a cope room after this, And I was talking to Mark Reid. I bet he's got all sorts of clever nicknames for you now. Does he? I don't know if we'll be able to get through all of this because we're coming up on the two hour mark. I don't want to push it any longer than that. But since you guys are going at this, I do want to get it to the point where, because you guys, I'm surprised Praise did this, like. So my guess is, so initially when I saw him kicking people, I'm like, oh boy, Praise is up to his shenanigans. But it looks like he removed everybody, left it for you two, which I knew was going to come. But the way he did it seemed kind of clumsy. But I'm hoping that he probably told people in the private chat and live chat, like, hey, we're just going to leave this to Darth and Mark, and then they're not going to bring anybody on. So you guys have this for the next, for the rest of this hour. But I'm wondering, there's a point here where I think he drops, or is this just you on your own? Kind of something
on my own. This is me just addressing my audience afterwards. So yeah, I eventually got kicked, kind of thing. So that's me getting kicked.
Huh. Okay. So yeah, I was wondering, do you want to kind of scan through some of this? I don't know why he's doing. It looks like Praise was trying to post images while you guys are talking. I think it's funny that he does shit like this, like, oh, I'm just going to let these two talk. And then he'll he used to do this a while ago where he would play sound. He had a soundboard and he'd play rude noises. It was just like, I thought you wanted just this. I thought you wanted the conversation just be the two people.
I didn't even know this was on here. I just posted it, which is just, I think it's Praise for not wanting me to put it on my channel, I think. Because he knows that I record them.
Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah. Do you guys get into a topic beyond this, or do you just kind of keep circling this absolute? What is absolute?
Circling, but if you just skip past that section, it'll get to sort of me eventually just telling him what's up. Yeah, just go from there.
Yeah, let's push it here.
Question: how can something be 1 and 3 at the same time? Is something that is 1 3?
Yeah, a cube is one thing, and it has threefold distinctions.
So it's 3 things. 1 cube is 3 things, is what you're saying?
No, it is something can be unified and also possess within its unity diversity.
Yes, I agree. But how can 1 cube have 3 things?
Mark,
how can 1 cube? Is a cube 1 thing?
Explain to me now, Mark.
Is a cube 1 thing?
I'm going to drop everything that's gone.
Is a cube 1 thing?
Mark, how do you know?
Is a cube 1 thing? Is a cube 1 thing?
Aren't you getting a cue here? I'm not paying attention to any of your verbal
Aren't you getting the cue? Yeah, I think most of us get the cue when you're not listening, Darth.
It's got to the many and the one problem, right? Which is sort of, you're probably familiar with it. It's sort of, so you have one thing, but it's made up of separate parts, like the human body is made up of cells, but we refer to the human body as just one thing. But how can it be one thing when it's made up of many things? And it's sort of a problem no one solved, right? It's sort of, how do you designate particulars kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
But he thinks he's
written. Yeah, and he's not the only one. This is kind of a common, like I'll go out and say that this is a Christian cliche, a Christian apologist cliche, that God solves the problem of the one and the many, and therefore, boom, that it has something to do with him being ultimate and the foundation of everything. Josephus Reid Mark did a great job explaining Darth's confusion about one and many here. Yeah, I don't really go after this one because it is the one and the many problem is sort of I don't get there. Well, I do kind of. Most of the time that I've heard this, I don't know if this is Darth's tactic, but the way they'll address the problem of the one and the many, the way they think God resolves it is Trinitarians usually do this, is that because God is a Trinity. and that somehow solves this issue, but it doesn't really make sense because it's sort of like, and I've heard explanations. One guy gave an explanation. Well, it's like an egg. You have an egg that's one thing, but you have the shell, and then you have the egg white, and then you have the egg yolk, and that's what we mean by a trinity, and that solves the problem of the one and the many. Like, no, it doesn't, because you have parts to a whole, right? That's the issue still exists. Yeah,
that is one thing and three things at the same time in their entirety. It's not parts of it. It's the three things are just as important as the one thing, if that makes sense. Like it's crazy. I don't understand the Trinity in the slightest.
And the odd thing is that the example does a good job of explaining it. Like if an egg kind of gives you a good understanding of the problem of the one and the many, why do you have to appeal to a Trinitarian version of a Christian God?
Right.
Like that just seems like like that's really overshooting it. Like, but I don't know. I haven't seen all the different variations of apologetic approaches on that. That the egg one is. There was one that somebody used that was like a dog. You've got a dog, but it has like parts. I mean, it's weird. It gets kind of weird. It just gets strange. It's sort of like kind of appealing. Like you were kind of talking about, like there's one of me, but there's actually multiple cells. I'm made up of cells, and each cell is just one thing, and you can even dive into that. Each cell has organelles, and those, there's a multitude within them, so yeah. And what I think is interesting when you're trying to ask this, like he's gotten good and triggered. So, but actually, given as long as you have spoken with him in this, like he's not as bad as I thought. I thought at this point he'd be like, maybe Praise would have put up a dumpster fire background or something, Darth would be screaming. So
cube, one thing.
I'm ignoring your
so a cube isn't one thing. A cube isn't one thing. Is a cube three things?
Mark, I'm ignoring you right now because you're ignoring me.
Well, I'm sick of you asking the same question over and over, so I'm not going to answer it anymore.
You refuse to answer the question.
Now, no. You refuse to accept the answer.
Mark, we're going back to the initial question of your atheism.
No, I don't think we are. I don't think we are.
Mark,
no.
In order for you to
you don't get to tell me that my answer you're just not going to accept. You're not.
I can do this all day too. I'm very
it's only
like yourself that have the gift of gab and filibustering.
Yeah, it's only like 1 o'clock here. I can stay up a lot later than you.
Yeah, Mark, I can do this all day too. Okay, I'm a big boy. Okay, I'm 61 years old. I'm well acquainted.
Very cringe referring to I'm a big boy. Are you?
It does smack of sort of a adolescent tantrum. I'm a big boy.
I'm a big boy. I'm an adult. You can't tell me what to do. Like I'm not. I'm just trying to get. And this is weird, right? That reaction, like, okay, I'm trying to give you an answer, which I get. You don't like. You don't agree with. Whatever, right? But don't tell me it's not my answer, right? Like this is so strange. Like, no, you're wrong, and I'm going to sit here and badger you until you give me the right answer. Like, that's not how conversations work, especially when you're talking about something that's based on like religious opinions and speculations about the nature of reality. But
yeah, and he doesn't seem to realize that I'm for some reason I'm immune to this. For some reason, I don't know why. It's just I'm not neurotypical. It doesn't faze me in the slightest.
I envy you. I envy you very much. The problem Darth just can't grasp that a set of particular things could itself be a concrete thing. Mark's body/cell analogy really nails that home. Yeah. I can do this all day. Captain Darth Dawkins, the first apologist. The interesting thing about this is that he can't, right? Darth would get dragged away by his favorite rerun of SNL or an Apple event. If they're announcing a new iPad, right, he's going to have to put a pin in the conversation, dump his rage, and run over and check and see what Apple's got coming up.
Oh, he's just, he's pro garbage in my opinion now. That's it. No.
I'm actually streaming this on a MacBook Air, so I apologize. I apologize if you feel the need to wash afterward. Like, oh god, that was hosted by a guy using an Apple product. I've used both. I don't know that I have a preference yet. I've had plenty of complaints about the Mac operating system. I can tell you that right now. Yes, Jay, I'm sitting backstage. I invited myself. That's what Jefferson gets for pinning the link. Yeah, I should probably take that down. Mark's already here. In fact, I think I'll do that. Nothing to say that I can't. Oh, did Jay drop out? Remove.
I don't know.
Oh, no, he is here. So.
Hey, Jay. Good to see you, mate.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I deserve that. I did leave that pin for a long time. Well, I left it up there because I wondered if Godless Girl was going to come back because she did wait for a while, and Mark had kind of tentatively was planning around leaving at about midnight. So anyway, we'll plow through this until we get to. I think we've got a few more minutes to go before he gets ejected. Let's see where it's at. Where does it get good juice?
See, I agree. The Linux master race, absolutely.
I'm gonna push it there. Let's see.
Than happy.
I don't think
more than happy to have you pepper me with questions about my worldview. But
Which never
I
happens,
started
yeah.
speaking to you about your atheism. That's what this conversation is about right now. And when you start talking to me about my worldview, this is a bait and switch. Now, how did you demonstrate
this conversation wasn't about atheism? I was talking to the lovely people, Praise and no. Let me finish. I was talking to them about Christianity, how you knew that you were a Christian, and their interpretation of scripture upon me. Then you came into the room and decided you wanted to make it about something else. Now, don't sort of pretend this isn't what happened and what happens every single time you step into a room. I mean, come on, let's be real here.
Okay, Mark, did you agree to, why did you not initially refuse to answer questions about your atheism, but now you are?
I'm not refusing. I just don't want to repeat the same answers over and over and over ad nauseum, because you're just looking for the answers that you want. Like you said, you're a dog after a bone, and a bone, the answer you want, is the only answer that you will accept. I keep explaining to you what my basis is, and you keep saying, no, that I need a different answer. I'm a dog with a bone. Yeah, I really do believe you are. You're after one thing and one thing alone, and it kind of shows, mate. You really need to have a think about whether you want to accept answers from people. Why do you even ask if you're only after one answer? Why don't you just assume they're going to answer that way? It's kind of weird. It's very weird.
And then something went wrong.
What in the hell happened there?
I assume I was kicked.
Oh, is that when you were kicked?
I think so, yeah.
He was either kicked. Yeah, who knows? I mean, it would be interesting to know kind of what was going on in the background, because if you were talking that long, I wondered if there either a lag, maybe hit Praise's channel or yours or both, and then maybe Darth was leaning on Praise to take that opportunity to snipe you.
Honestly, I just assumed I was kicked. I just left. It's just like, well.
I think that was a good last point. But yeah. So anyway, for anybody that's interested in watching that video in its entirety, Mark, the link for Mark's version of it is up there, and then Mark goes into an explanation a little bit later.
And not really answering the question. Then they say, "Oh yes, I did it."
Oh, so you're kind of going through and reviewing some of the things that he said.
Oh no, this is them ranting at me afterwards. And the funny thing was, I kept dropping into the stream, like, half an hour later, then an hour later. He was basically sitting in a room ranting at these people who were saying nothing, right? They weren't saying anything. Like Praise and Olive and Sarah.
They don't have to. You got owned. And that's what they think. And they're happy about it.
I don't think so, because they were just sitting there. So it was like you had people held hostage by a guy.
Well, it's that too. Yeah, it's that too.
Yeah, just going off his nut
Mark.
in the middle of the street. Yeah.
Well, we see a kind of culty hostage situation style thing. What they're doing is maintaining a long-suffering patience with a fellow brother in Christ who's really struggling. That's what I think. Well, let me play a little bit of this, because I think
hold on. I want to give Mark this advice though. The next time you're around Darth Dawkins, just tell him that, in your opinion, his method of precept is nothing more than gaslighting. Oh, he will love you. He will just love you if you say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did mention that he was gaslighting me during the conversation at one point, but yeah.
Well, everything that what you're doing, this conversation that you're having with Darth is like, and Jeff's already mentioned this, is a 100% prime example of what Ozzy was bitching about the other day. 100%.
Which Yeah, which is interesting because Darth is fine tuned. Like he's got like a customized version of the precept kind of approach to things. JT in that particular conversation hits him up with something that's has been around for at least a decade, or well, it's been around since Bronson, really. And you could somebody like Ozzy who's dealt with it, dozens of times, possibly hundreds of times, could see it coming a mile away. Darth benefits from the fact that he's kind of worked it out on his own, but at the same time, like he gets so impatient with everybody that because there's two ways of doing it. Like the way that JT does it is that kind of stereotypical, I'm going to use the precept apologetic to stiff arm my skeptic opponent. Like I don't want them to get any more words in. Darth uses it in some kind of weird Socratic way to try to get you to, answer his questions, but then loses, he doesn't have the patience to really track your questions, right? Like it's a really weird setup. It's like, okay, I'm not getting the response. And I don't think he's doing it like he's not taking this kind of explicit tactical approach to it. But it's pretty clear that like if you start talking about things that definitionally don't match with his, he starts to lose his cool.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, I think he's been doing this for so long. He can't be, in a way, it kind of shows his inability to be charitable now, right? Because he's trying to push the conversation in a particular way to, like what Mark said, to get I want these specific answers from you. The answers that I'm getting from you do not satisfy me in any way, shape, or form. But instead of adapting to whatever Mark is saying, he's trying to force the issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And you did get some a shout out from Jody. I love this. You didn't give the narcissist the air he needed. It's weird, awesome. Drove DD nuts.
So much, Jody. I really appreciate it, and yeah, thanks for giving me some feedback on how I went. I don't know. I feel like there's stuff that I could have said differently. Like I said, I had a lot of that. I think the French have a word for it. It's like the spirit of the stairway. When you walk away from a conversation, like, oh God, I should have said this.
Yeah. I think everybody experiences that acutely with somebody like Darth Dawkins.
In all honesty, Mark, I think you did. My first lengthy conversation with Darth Dawkins, I think, was on One Way's channel, and the only reason I didn't get kicked or thrown out was because, well, One Way was modding, and One Way doesn't play that game when it comes to Darth. So, but here's the thing: I really wish I could remember how well that conversation went because I was drunk off my ass. I was up all night drinking.
Jesus.
Blot it out. Yeah, blot out Darth. That's the way to go. Yeah. All right, guys. I'm so sorry. I've got to go to bed. It's like 1 o'clock and I'm dying here. So Thank you so much. I really appreciate you going through that with me. And thanks to everyone watching. I really appreciate your support. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just conking out. But it was really fun. I had a blast. So do take care, and I will certainly catch up with you guys soon. We're in the circles, so yeah, fantastic. See you guys.
Yeah, take care. Have a good night.
Well, we'll see you Sunday evening. He'll be debating Jesus' lard tomorrow.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, unless Jill changes his plans again, right?
You mean if he just assumes that Mark's backing out again and then decides to show up?
Well, let's find out. Where is that? Is that on SFT or is that Modern Day Debate or?
That is Debate Cafe, run by Snake. Snake was right. That's
right, Debate Cafe. Let me take a look and see. I'll pull that up now so that people can maybe. Debate Cafe. Ooh, red, black, and white. Satanic. Apologies about the canceled slavery debate. I don't see a notice for
upcoming.
Doesn't look like they've got it live yet, but hopefully they will. But I can at least post this link. So if anybody's interested, Mark Reid will tentatively should be doing a debate with Rebuke and Reprove, formerly Jesus is Lord, on that YouTube channel tomorrow sometime. And what's the topic that they're going to be doing?
It's about biblical slavery. Does the Bible endorse or support biblical slavery or something, unless they change the topic?
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I was up on some of those emails that Mark showed me, but as of now, because they, the things that are going on, the reschedule and all that. We'll see. But I think it's going to be 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think they scheduled it for the same time as the last one, but I could be wrong.
I like this from Russ Wren. Thanks, Mark of the Beast Reid. Well done. I think it'd be hilarious if he changed his YouTube channel to that, because people go in there and like, who is this anti-theist blowhard? And then they pop it up and it's soft-spoken Mark. Hello, let's talk about
Hello.
like, this guy doesn't seem like a beast at all. I'm like, well, the guy put up with Darth Dawkins for more than an hour and never really lost his cool. He didn't even flush. Like, I don't think his blood pressure even went up. So yeah, I would say, yeah, that the man's an animal, because I wouldn't have lasted like 10 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I can't with Darth. It's just like, no, that constant badgering and fucking about. Like, oh, I hate that shit.
Well, that's what I thought was funny about that conversation. Well, it wasn't even really a conversation because Ozzy had said that he was having a decent conversation with Tone Loc, and then JT comes in there and starts with that precept shit. What I think is funny is that JT is doing this to somebody who I believe taught philosophy.
Yeah, he did.
And
yeah,
focus,
I think he was like a TA. Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, I think his focus in philosophy was epistemology. So that was funny. Like,
yeah, I think he was dealing with that, but I think I think he was going to lean into that possibly for his PhD before he decided to not pursue that.
I know why too, but we're not going to get into that. It's nothing controversial. It's things worked out in a way. Things worked out better for him, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a PhD is that's a big commitment. So yeah, and I think even he said, like, he was still interested in it, still is, but as far as like dedicating that kind of time to it, I don't think. I mean, that's a hell of a push.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
either way, it was just funny listening to JT trying to precept Ozzy. I'm like, dude, that is not going to get you anywhere.
That's probably going to be my next video. Was that one, because I listened to that one and I was sitting in my own place, like applauding, to the screen, like, like, yeah, this is exactly what these guys need to hear more often. This bullshit, this feigned civility, this gaslighting pantomime of, I was being nice and you were the one that got triggered. Like, don't fuck off with that. Just eat up, fucking yeah, jog on. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap this up here because Jeffy needs a sandwich. So I'm going to take this off the air. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the live chats. Thank you, everybody in there. Special shout out to Michael Deaton for putting up with Warren.
He didn't hang. It's funny. He didn't hang around.
Yeah, no, he didn't. And Otangelo was here for. I don't know if anybody. Don't tell me, but actually, do tell me if any of the mods like blocked him or banned him. Let me know.
As far as I could tell, no, nobody touched him.
Oh, okay. Inoculum Fear says Jefferson, the debate tomorrow is canceled.
Oh.
Okay.
Who can't?
I wonder. Are you and I going to be getting some emails from Jill talking about how Mark can't commit?
No,
Mark's running scared from Jill.
Mark very much wants to have that debate, even though as maddening as it was. This is from a conversation I had with Mark. As maddening as it was for Mark to deal with Jill and having discussing what it is, emailing back and forth about the debate. He very much still wanted to. He still very much wants to have the debate with Jill. So I don't think I'm going to say that high probability he's not the one that canceled.
Yeah. Thanks for that reminder, AJ. Yep, Mom, I am here live, but I am wrapping things up. Let's see.
Yeah, like
Ben Geyser, Otangelo left on his own. Yeah, Otangelo gets bored with me quick. Like anytime, like I've had if I've crossed paths with him and had a conversation, he tries to needle me with like, oh, are you covering more Darth Dawkins? You sure you want to be here? The topic's not about Darth Dawkins, Jefferson. Like, shut up, Otangelo. Like, I can talk about other things. I just don't. So, all right. So I'm going to take this off air, and we will see you all next time. Next video, I think, because it's still banging around in my head, I'm kind of obsessed with it, is the Tom Rabbit video where JT crosses paths with Ozzy. I do want to talk about that one because Ozzy makes some great points about just everything that's wrong with the way the presuppositional apologetic gets deployed on people over in Clubhouse and elsewhere. So,
telling you, it's gaslighting. It's 100%.
It is. It's gaslighting.
Gaslighting.
It's and Ozzy nails it on the head. He's just like it's feigned civility and it's dishonest. It's bullshit.
Because I want them to demonstrate how they know that I know something. That's what I want. I said, okay, you say you know what I know. Demonstrate how I know that. Demonstrate how you know my mental state when it comes to the knowledge of God.
Yeah.
Go.
Yep.
Now, enough of this. A God does not exist, because I really want to know how you know I know something based on what some guy wrote in a book or in a letter to the Church of Rome a couple thousand years ago, right?
Yeah.
Tell me how he knows that.
Thank you, Michael Deaton. I appreciate it. And thank you, Michael Deaton, and all the other mods for doing what you do. I know I was surprised I didn't see a lot of like the Russian sex porn bots popping up this time. So
I cleared my cookies. They didn't follow me in.
Oh, it's you. Okay. I was gonna say, who keeps giving my live chat this like digital STD? It's been you the entire time. Like you show up and a bunch of like Bulgarian sex porn bots pop up. Like, what the fuck is this?
No, sometimes one time Jill did it. And then it was Brojo's, I think. And I was there for a while. And then Jill comes in and he's on as something. And next thing you know, we start seeing the sex bots. I'm like, yeah, it's Jill, all right. The sex bots have followed him in.
Anonymous says, anonymous, the debate is not canceled. Okay, so I can't confirm or deny the existence of this debate. Maybe Mark Reid will be having a debate sometime tomorrow on Debate Cafe.
Well, I think Inoculum was confused that the video about that canceled debate was the one from last week.
Oh, okay, maybe. Yeah.
That might be where Inoculum is thinking. That was the debate from last Sunday that was supposed to happen. That might be where the confusion is. I
think that's what Anonymous is saying too, because the person that said that just read the title. It's still Sunday. Okay. And it doesn't look like they posted it yet. It's not scheduled yet, but Debate Cafe, I'll probably get that up soon. So yeah, if you're interested in watching Mark Reid, go ahead. Trigger warning. It involves rebuke and reprove, AKA Jesus is Lord, who is just the worst. So with that, on that cheery note, goodbye, everybody. Take care. Have a great weekend, and I will catch you all next time.
Yeah, that's right.